Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I really enjoyed this lineup, so I hope you all enjoy them as well. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes on this one. Dropping a like helps ensure more people see the content, but it does also just let me know I'm doing a good job. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. I post content just like this all of the time. I have almost 800 of these videos across the channel, so if you're at all interested, please be sure to subscribe, check out my other videos. There is endless content for you to listen to. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the horror stories with no mid-roll ads right after the ad break after this intro. There won't be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. Children ask a lot of questions, but they're never the right ones. For example, when I was a kid, I never asked my parents why we had to live in the middle of the woods. I never asked why our neighbors lived so far away, or why none of them had children. And I never asked why we had to turn off all the lights before sundown. I never suspected something was off because my parents were smart about it. They treated the lights rule like it was normal. So I did too. They even made a game out of it. Every sundown, the three of us would race around the house, scrambling to see who could turn off the most light switches. What could have been a traumatic memory was transformed into whimsical fun. But you can only cheat the inevitable so many times. One night, Dad was working late. Mom lost track of time for some reason, and I was distracted by my bionicles. The setting sun didn't cross my mind until Dad burst through the front door in a panic. I looked up, startled by the sudden entrance, and saw the sky behind him was pitch dark. "Honey, turn off the lights," Dad barked as he dashed to the nearest light switch. My parents scrambled the house in a panic, but I stayed calm. Thinking about it now, their urgency should have frightened me, but I was naive and invested in my game, so I continued playing until the house went completely dark. Reluctantly accepting that it was time for bed, I gathered up my Lego warriors and put them where they wouldn't get stepped on. Once all of them were safely accounted for, I looked out a nearby window and noticed twin lights staring out of the trees. At first, I was scared, but as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I realized it was just some critter out for an evening stroll. I knew that animals roamed the woods at night, but I'd never seen one get that close to the house before. Overcome by childish excitement, I waved hello to it. It waved back. "Carson?" Dad hissed, doing his best to stay quiet. "Where you at, bud?" "Shh," I whispered back. "You'll scare it off." "What?" Dad bolted into the room, his footsteps a clumsy contrast to the stillness of the night. I looked away from the window to shush him. When I turned back, the thing was gone. "Never mind, Dad," I said with a shrug. "It ran away." Dad sighed in relief and picked me up. I felt his heartbeat thunder in his chest as he checked to make sure the window was shut. "Don't worry about it," he whispered in a strained voice. "Come on. Let's get to bed." Mom and Dad had me sleep with them for some reason, but otherwise the rest of the night was completely normal. There was no cataclysm, no punishment for breaking the rules, no ominous sense of dread lingering over the house. Life continued on normally, unaffected by the night's mistake. My parents were nervous at first but laughed it off after a week or two. They never suspected something was off because Mr. Pallywag was smart about it. I still remember the day Mr. Pallywag introduced himself. Mom had left me to my own devices again, so I went out to the backyard and invented some game to keep myself occupied. Whatever I'd come up with must have been good, because I was so absorbed in what I was doing. It took me a while to realize someone was watching me. For a while I pretended it was my imagination. But when I couldn't ignore the feeling of eyes peering out from the woods any longer, I stopped and scowled at the trees. "Quit being weird," I shouted, my courage bolstered by youthful ignorance. Come on out. In response to my demands, a large bipedal creature shuffled out from the tree line. It was covered in a shaggy coat of gray fur, and its small dark eyes reminded me of a great white shark's. It would have been frightening, if not for the pork pie hat, lightly perched on top of its head. Between the hat and its spotless white gloves, it looked more like a cartoon character come to life than an animal. "Hello," the creature said with a shy, friendly wave. "Do you live here?" "Uh-huh." "Oh, good. I'm your neighbor, Mr. Pallywag. Sorry it took so long for me to introduce myself. What's your name?" "Carson." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Carson. Are your parents home?" "Mom is, so you should stay back. She doesn't like it when animals get too close to the house." Mr. Pallywag frowned, which made him look even more cartoonish. I couldn't help laughing at his expression. "I don't see what's so funny." Mr. Pallywag huffed. "I'm not an animal. I'm a respectable citizen." "I'm sorry. You made a funny face, that's all." "Oh, that's not a funny face. This is." Mr. Pallywag stuck out his tongue and bulged his eyes. It looked so goofy I nearly passed out from laughter. I laughed so loudly, Mom popped her head out of the window and asked me, "What's so funny, Carson?" Mr. Pallywag made a funny face. "Mr. Pallywag?" "Yeah, don't you see him?" Mom scanned the trees, a frown firmly etched on her face. I looked behind me to find that Mr. Pallywag had disappeared. "That's weird," I said. "He was right here." "Honey, who's Mr. Pallywag?" "He's a big, furry monster wearing a hat. You can't miss him." "Oh," Mom sighed, relieved. "He's imaginary, then." Part of me wanted to argue, but I stayed quiet. If Mom didn't want me to believe Mr. Pallywag was real, that was her choice. Nothing worth arguing over. Besides, adults always hated being wrong. An argument could only end with me getting dragged inside. "Well, I'll leave you boys to it. Have fun, okay?" "Okay." Mom went back to whatever she was doing. Once he was sure she wouldn't come back, Mr. Pallywag popped out from behind a tree and grinned at me. "Sorry I called you a monster," I said quickly. "But you got mad when I said animal, so..." "That's all right, Carson. I understand. But I won't forgive you unless you do something for me." "What's that?" "Play a game with me," Mr. Pallywag cried, dramatically flourishing his hat. "Okay." And just like that, I made a friend. Mr. Pallywag came to visit me as much as he could. Sometimes he'd go missing for days or even weeks. But I didn't mind. He always made up for it with a fantastic new story about his travels. I always liked stories, but my parents rarely told me any. Most nights it was too dark to read anything, and they were too busy during the day. Luckily, telling stories was Mr. Pallywag's favorite pastime, and I was happy to listen. Some nights when I had trouble falling asleep, I would even crack the window open so Mr. Pallywag could continue telling me about his adventures. He was always happy to do it, but he never came into my home. I asked him why once, but he just shook his head and said my parents wouldn't like it. That makes sense to me now, but at the time I thought it was silly. Mom didn't mind Mr. Pallywag at all. Dad did at first, but then one night, he and Mom had a fight about it. It got really intense until Mom said it was perfectly normal for a kid with no friends to make one up. That made Dad go quiet. He didn't say anything about Mr. Pallywag again. I can't blame my parents for thinking Mr. Pallywag was imaginary. He was very good at hiding. In fact, he was so good that, at first, I tried to make a game out of catching him. "Look, Mommy," I'd squeal with delight. "He's behind the swing set. No, now he's behind the sandbox." But eventually, I let him hide without calling attention to it. He was quiet as the wind and quick as a fox, and nobody could find him if he didn't want to be found. I also got the feeling something bad would happen if my parents caught him. I didn't want that. He was my best friend. Most of the time, Mr. Pallywag was content to play in my backyard, but he asked me to come into the woods with him twice. The first time happened because Mom yelled at me. Before I tell this part, I want to make it clear that Mom was not abusive. That said, she wasn't exactly Mother of the Year either. There were mitigating circumstances, granted. She didn't have a lot of friends, and we didn't leave the house much because of our isolation. Most days she was either alone or only had me for company. If that doesn't sound so bad, imagine being trapped in a remote cabin and the only person you can have a conversation with refuses to talk about anything that isn't related to cartoons, or how hungry they are. Frankly, it's a miracle she didn't kill me. I was usually content to entertain myself, but one day, for whatever reason, all I wanted to do was spend time with her. "Mom, come play with me," I whined. "Not right now, honey," she said, doing her best to keep her voice calm. "Why don't you watch a movie?" "I don't wanna." "Well, how about you play your PlayStation?" "No, I want to play a real-life game." "Okay, well, why don't you ask Mr. Pallywag to play with you?" "I don't want to play with Mr. Pallywag. I want to play with you." "Carson, I want to play." My tantrum raged on like that for a while. Mom tried to soothe me, but I refused to be sated. Finally, she snapped and shouted, "Enough." The force of the shout shut me up immediately. "I can't play with you right now, Carson. I need some time to myself, okay? Just shut up and go outside." With that, Mom stormed to her bedroom and slammed the door shut. Tears welled up in my eyes as I scurried outside. It was my first rejection. I remember it better than my first kiss. For what felt like hours, I sat on my swing set and bawled. If Mom noticed, she didn't come out to comfort me. Odds are she was just holed up in the house somewhere, but at the time it felt like she was actively ignoring me. "Hey, Carson!" Mr. Pallywag's sudden appearance didn't surprise me. He made a habit of showing up out of nowhere. Normally, I pretended to be surprised, but I was so depressed I couldn't summon the energy for it. "Carson?" Mr. Pallywag asked. "You okay?" "Mom yelled at me," I choked out between sniffles. "Oh no, come here, bud. It's okay." Mr. Pallywag opened his arms and wrapped me in a big hug. I always liked Mr. Pallywag's hugs. It was like hugging a big warm pillow. There was something else about them too. Something that made you feel safe and protected. Kind of like falling asleep. "Tell you what," Mr. Pallywag said when I calmed down enough. "How about we do something special today?" "Special?" "Yeah, I'm gonna show you the best spot in the entire forest." "I don't know. Mom and Dad said I can't go into the woods because it's dangerous." "That's not true," Mr. Pallywag replied as he patted my head. "They said you can't go in the woods alone. You're not alone if I'm with you, right? Besides, they won't even know you were gone if we're quick enough." For a moment I hesitated. I was a good kid. I always followed the rules. But Mr. Pallywag had a point. If I was with him, I wouldn't be alone, and I wanted to get back at Mom somehow. I could bend the rules a little. Just once. "Okay," I said, "but we have to be quick." "Deal." Mr. Pallywag took my hand and we walked into the woods together. It was a beautiful day. Birds chirped sonatas above us, and sunlight slipped through the cracks in the tree branches to cast macabre shadows on the ground. I made a game out of jumping from sunspot to sunspot. Mr. Pallywag thought it looked like fun, so he joined in as well. The two of us got so wrapped up in the game I almost forgot how upset I'd been. Almost. Eventually our route led us to a circular clearing. Mr. Pallywag strolled to the center of it and sat down with a great big sigh. I followed his lead and inspected my surroundings. The clearing felt peaceful, but there was something vaguely sad about it too. "This is my special spot, Carson," Mr. Pallywag said. "What do you think?" "I like it, but what makes it so special?" "Well, this is where most of my friends decide to come to the party." "Party? What party? Why, only the greatest, most fantabulous party ever. There's cake, balloons, and games galore. And there's plenty of music and dancing. And stories? Of course, Mr. Pallywag laughed. All the stories you could ever want. That sounds nice, I said, trying to imagine it. Are there other kids there? Oh yes, tons of kids. Does everyone get along? Of course. And nobody's left out? Nope. Good. We sat in silence for a while. I didn't mind. Silences felt okay with Mr. Pallywag. Not like when Dad got quiet. That was usually a sign he was about to start lecturing me about how I didn't clean my room enough, or that I was spending too much time on the television or something. It wasn't like when Mom got quiet either. When she got quiet, it was because she was mad and didn't want us to know. It didn't work, though. I always knew. Something in the trees caught my attention. It was slowly swinging back and forth like the pendulum in my grandma's old clock. I watched it for a while, back and forth, but couldn't figure out what it was. Part of me wanted to take a closer look, but Mr. Pallywag squeezed my shoulder before I had the chance. Okay, Carson, he said. It's time to go back now. Oh, really? Can't we go to the party instead? Mr. Pallywag grinned. For the first time, I noticed how large his teeth were. They weren't sharp fangs or anything. They were just large. I had a sudden urge to run away, but I ignored it. One day, Mr. Pallywag said, taking my hand. But not just yet. Why not? You're not sad enough. I wasn't sure what Mr. Pallywag meant, but I let him lead me away from the clearing without complaint. As we entered the woods, I glanced over my shoulder, hoping to get one last look at whatever was swaying back there. No luck. It was too well hidden by the foliage. Let's race, Mr. Pallywag said. Last one there's a grounded swallow. Mr. Pallywag let go of my hand and sprinted into the woods. I ran after him, the swinging object forgotten. When we got back, he stopped me and knelt down to my eye level. One quick thing before you go, Mr. Pallywag whispered. Promise you won't tell your parents about my special place, okay? Why not? Well, it's not very special if everyone knows about it, right? It made sense, but there was an icky feeling in my gut as I nodded and swore to keep it a secret. Thanks, Carson. I'll see you later, okay? I smiled and nodded again. Mr. Pallywag grinned and gave me a big hug goodbye. I hugged him back and walked into the house. When I ambled into the kitchen, I found Mom crying at the kitchen table. Mom? Carson! Mom wailed. Where were you? She didn't let me answer before she scrambled over and wrapped me in a bone-crushing hug. I'm fine, Mommy, I said, shocked. I just went into the woods with Mr. Pallywag. Carson, what have I told you about going into the woods alone? But I wasn't alone. Mr. Pallywag was. Mr. Pallywag doesn't count. You're not allowed to leave the backyard unless you're with me or Daddy. Do you understand? But no buts. Honestly, what were you thinking? It was Mr. Pallywag's idea. He said, I don't care what he said. I was worried sick about you. I thought about protesting more, but I didn't bother. There was no use fighting her. As promised, I didn't tell my parents about Mr. Pallywag's secret spot. I didn't tell them about the party either. Something in my gut said they wouldn't like it. At some point, I went back to school, but the only thing I remember about it is getting bullied. I tried talking to the nicer kids about Mr. Pallywag once. They didn't care. I stopped trying. Thinking back on it, nobody in my family had many friends. I guess that's why we all loved Uncle Dan so much. Uncle Dan was born in that backwater town and never quite managed to escape, but he didn't let it get to him. My parents liked him, and I was thrilled whenever he came over. He was no Mr. Pallywag, mind, but he was the closest anyone got. Unlike most adults, Uncle Dan took time to make sure I was feeling okay. He was a great listener, too. no matter what the topic was. He'd patiently allow me to ramble about it until I'd exhausted myself. If it was something bad, he'd offer sympathy or advice. I was just talking about Power Rangers or my latest video game. He'd run his fingers through his thick red beard and let out a low whistle of amazement. "Wow," he said in a tone implying I'd solved world hunger. "That is really something, kiddo. Thanks for sharing." When most people said stuff like that, I knew they were only saying it to humor me. Uncle Dan was special because I believed him. One time I asked Uncle Dan why he liked talking to me so much. He got real serious and said it reminded him of spending time with his daughter. I asked if I could meet her sometime. He got real quiet and shook his head. I didn't ask about her again. For some reason, the one thing I didn't tell Uncle Dan about was Mr. Pallywag. In fact, he might never have known if I hadn't shown him my drawing. It was just a crayon scribble of Mr. Pallywag waving hello, but I'd gotten the hat just right, and I was proud of my work. Obviously, the next time Uncle Dan came over, I made it a priority to show him my masterpiece. Uncle Dan, look at what I drew," I chirped as I shoved the drawing at him. "Carson," Dad scolded, smiling despite himself. "Give him a second to breathe." "That's all right, Keith," Uncle Dan chuckled. "Let's see what Picasso whipped up for us." Uncle Dan ruffled my hair and took the drawing. The second he saw what it was, his smile faded. I waited for him to say something, suddenly self-conscious. He was quiet for so long, I looked to Dad for reassurance. He looked just as confused as I was. "Uncle Dan?" I asked. It's great, Carson," Uncle Dan replied, his hands and voice shaking. "Great job. What's the fella's name?" "Mr. Pallywag." Uncle Dan's face went pale. "That's fun," he said in a low, emotionless voice. "Carson, would you excuse us for a moment? There's something I need to talk to your dad about." Okay." Unnerved, I left the room. I'd never seen an adult act like that before. I knew I shouldn't have eavesdropped, but I was so worried about Uncle Dan I stopped by the doorway to listen in. "Jesus, Dan, what's wrong? You look pale." "How long has Carson been talking about this thing?" "I'm sorry?" "Mr. Pallywag, how long?" "Oh, right. Couple of months, I think." "Months?" Uncle Dan yelled. "Yeah, the kid's got an imaginary friend. So what?" "Have you been leaving the lights on?" "No, of course not." "Well, okay, we did once, but that was..." Mom must have walked in because I heard her ask, "What's going... Dan, are you alright?" "You have to move," Uncle Dan insisted. "Now." "Move? I don't..." "We're not moving," Dad snapped. "Don't give me that tough guy crap, Keith. Christ, I should have figured this would happen." "Excuse me? What gives you the right to..." "Shut up and listen. Jenny drew that thing too. Right before... The house went deathly quiet. I could just barely hear Uncle Dan quietly sobbing. It made me uncomfortable, so I slunk off to my room. I didn't come out until Mom called me for dinner. As I sat down at the table, I looked over to Uncle Dan. It was like nothing had happened. He even shot me a cheerful thumbs up. "Sorry for the scare, kiddo," he said. "I remembered something really important. Boring grown-up stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." I nodded and pretended everything was fine. Uncle Dan was doing a good job acting normal, but my parents couldn't keep up the facade. Little things gave them away. They'd laugh a little too long at Uncle Dan's jokes, or they'd shoot me worried glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The second Uncle Dan left, my folks turned out the lights. "Carson, why don't you go get ready for bed?" Mom asked. "But it isn't even dark yet." "I know, but your dad wants to read you a story." "Really?" "Yes, really." I dashed to the bathroom and got ready for bed in record time. When I was done, I jumped into bed and Dad walked in with a beat-up old book. "Hey, bud," Dad said in a soft voice. "All set?" I nodded, too excited to speak. "Good. I've been saving this one until you were old enough. It's called Alice's Adventures in Wonderland." With great care, Dad gingerly flipped to the first chapter and began to read. I fell in love with it immediately. After finishing the chapter about poor old Bill the Lizard, Dad shut the book and smiled at me. "Well, liking it so far?" "Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Mr. Pallywig's stories." The corner of Dad's mouth flickered. "Oh yeah?" he asked. "Yeah, you do the voices better though." "Well, glad I've got that going for me." Suddenly Dad sniffed and wrapped me in a gigantic hug. That startled me. Dad wasn't opposed to hugging, but he rarely initiated. "Carson, you know Mom and I love you very much, right?" "Uh-huh." "And that we only want what's best for you, right?" "Uh-huh." "Okay, good." I hugged him back and we sat there for a while in uncomfortable silence. It might have been my imagination, but I swear I felt a tear drop onto the back of my neck. After what felt like forever, Dad sighed, let me go, and gently punched my shoulder. "Good night, kiddo," Dad said softly. "Love you." "Love you too, Dad." Dad smiled, turned out the light, and shut the door. I sat in bed and watched the sunset. I had a feeling something significant had happened, but I was too young to understand what it was. My parents were different after that night. Dad used to be content to spend weekends at home, but suddenly he wanted to spend every free moment away from the house. The nearest thing to do was an hour's drive away. But he didn't care. The longer the trip, the better. Mom changed too. She went from always wanting space to constantly occupying mine. If I was playing video games, she'd read her book on the couch nearby. If I was making something with my Lego sets, she would develop a keen interest in the construction effort. If I vaguely stated I was interested in something, she'd help me become the world's best expert in it. Because of my parents' sudden interest in my affairs, I didn't see Mr. Pallywig for weeks. They never officially told me to stop talking about him, but I could tell they didn't like him anymore. Whenever I mentioned wanting to play in the backyard, they always found some excuse to keep me inside the house. Then one night, my parents sat me down to talk. Neither bothered hiding the relieved expressions on their faces. "Great news, buddy," Dad said. "I got a new job. We're going to be moving soon." "Really?" "Yep, we're going to the city, far away from these boring old woods." "What about Mr. Pallywig?" "Well, Mr. Pallywig is staying here," Mom replied, shooting my dad an unreadable glance. "What? Why can't he come with us?" "He just can't," Dad said forcefully. "I mean, the forest is his home, right? It wouldn't be fair to make him move out too. If he can't come, I don't want to leave." "Carson, no." Despite my parents' best efforts, I bawled for hours. No matter what they tried, I refused to be comforted. I loved my parents and Uncle Dan, sure, but they were family. Mr. Pallywig was my only friend. I was inconsolable until I remembered Mr. Pallywig's party. Somehow my childish logic determined that the party was the solution to all my problems. If I could just figure out how to get there, everything would be all right. I wouldn't have to move. I wouldn't have to leave Mr. Pallywig behind. I wouldn't have to feel alone. My feelings about the move didn't deter my parents' plans. Within a week, they had all of our stuff packed and ready to go. I tried my hardest to see Mr. Pallywig, but Mom and Dad refused to leave my side. It was looking like I'd never get to go to that party. Then, when I'd finally given up hope, I stumbled into my opening. The day before the move, Dad was trying yet again to sell me on our new home. "You're going to love it, bud," he said. There are a lot of other kids in the neighborhood. I didn't reply. The phone rang. Dad ignored it. I faintly heard Mom answer it in the other room. I bet you'll make a ton of new friends, he said. No, I won't. They'll be mean to me. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. Honey? Mom called. It's the mill. Something about paperwork? Dad swore under his breath and dashed out of the room. I stayed behind and scanned the room bored. That's when I saw the unguarded back door. I knew I wouldn't get another chance. I crept to the door and opened it as quietly as I could. After making sure my parents weren't coming, I scanned the trees for any signs of life. Mr. Pallywag? I whispered. Mr. Pallywag, are you there? Shh, over here. Carson, quick. Without thinking, I bolted into the woods. I didn't get far before something strong and furry yanked me behind a tree. It put a hand over my mouth and shushed me. Carson, I heard Dad call. Carson, where'd you get to? Stay quiet, okay? Mr. Pallywag whispered in my ear. Carson, this isn't funny. Carson! Mr. Pallywag placed me on his back, dropped to all fours and dashed into the woods. I gasped and held on tightly to his neck. I'd never seen Mr. Pallywag run that fast before. It was exhilarating. I would have enjoyed it more if Dad hadn't sounded so distraught. This next part won't make sense unless I talk about Eli Miller. Bad timing. I know, but bear with me. I didn't know Eli very well. He was a teenager, and even if we were the same age, he wasn't the type of guy Mom would want me to hang out with. He was the resident, troubled kid. Graffiti, antagonizing the police, drinking, that kind of thing. Dad always shook his head whenever he came up. I think that was his way of saying he felt sorry for him. Even though I heard a lot of stories about Eli, I only saw him in person once. Mom had dragged me along on a shopping trip to our local Dollar General, and I wasn't overly thrilled about being there. Normally, Mom insisted that I stay close to her when she was shopping, but that day she said I could browse the books by myself as long as I didn't leave the aisle. I was thrilled. It was one of my first tastes of freedom, and I capitalized on it immediately. As I browsed through the scattered copies of Animorphs and Goosebumps, Eli strolled into the aisle without a care in the world. He whistled a tuneless song, picked a magazine off the shelf, and casually flipped through it. I was so low to the ground that he didn't notice me. Something about the way Eli flipped through the magazine made me stop and watch him with juvenile fascination. After a minute or two, Eli scanned the store. When he thought nobody was watching, he casually slipped the magazine into the inner pocket of his jacket. A perfect crime. That was when he caught me staring at him. He froze, his hand still clutching the stolen loot. I knew I should have called someone over, or told him off for stealing or something. Instead, I put a finger to my lips. Eli smirked, nodded at me, and walked away. He didn't get to the end of the aisle before he stopped and looked back at me. I kept my finger on my lips in silent assurance. A weird expression spread across his face. He rocked on the balls of his feet and kept glancing from me to the door. He was home free and he knew it. And yet... Eli shut his eyes and sighed. He removed the magazine from his pocket and put it back on the shelf. I cocked my head, confused. "Don't steal, kid," Eli whispered. I smiled at him and nodded. He shot me a wink and left the store. I never told anybody else about it, but that little encounter left a big impact on me. Weird as it sounds, Eli transformed into a sort of Robin Hood figure in my head. Someone who understood right and wrong in a way stuffy adults don't. He was a living legend. A hero, maybe. That's why I was devastated when he killed himself. I never got the full story. From what I heard, the poor kid hung himself in the woods without leaving a note. It took a week for anyone to notice he'd gone missing. Took another 2 for somebody to find him. What hurt me most was the injustice of it. In all the stories I'd heard, dying alone in the woods was a fate reserved for villains. Eli deserved better. It wasn't fair. After Eli's death, I had a recurring nightmare. In it, I'd be walking alone in the woods. I could feel something watching me, but I couldn't see it because it was hidden by the trees. Eventually, I'd start running, but thick vines would lash around my throat and yank me off the forest floor. The vines would lift me off the ground by the neck. Higher, higher, and the higher I got, the harder it was to breathe. And I would choke and choke and choke until I finally woke up, panicking and screaming. I still have that nightmare sometimes. Mr. Pallywag didn't stop running until we reached his secret spot. I gave him a moment to catch his breath, then climbed off and wrapped him in a massive hug. "I missed you," I whispered. "I missed you too. I'm moving away tomorrow." "I know. I don't want to leave," I sniffled. "Can I go to the party instead?" There was a brief pause. "Oh, I don't know," Mr. Pallywag said with calculated indifference. "I'm sure you'd have much more fun living in your fancy new house in the city." "No, Mr. Pallywag, I don't want to move. I want to stay here with you." "More than anything?" I nodded. "More than anything in the whole wide world?" I nodded again and looked up to see Mr. Pallywag's expression. He was grinning, and there was a triumphant expression in his dark eyes. "Well, if you're absolutely sure," he said, "I guess I can arrange it, but there's a few things we have to do first." "Like what?" Mr. Pallywag pulled off his hat and rummaged around inside it. "Let me see. It's around here somewhere. Ah, there it is." With solemn dignity, Mr. Pallywag pulled a long, thick rope out of his hat. The rope kept going and going to the point where I laughed at how absurdly long it was. Mr. Pallywag laughed too, and ended the bit by dumping the rest onto the ground. Then, suddenly serious, he picked up one end of the rope and held it where I could see. "Watch carefully, Carson," he said. "You have to get this just right, or it won't work." I paid close attention as Mr. Pallywag slowly tied a knot with the rope. It wasn't very complicated. A couple simple moves, and he'd made a knot which left a big loop at the end. When he was done, Mr. Pallywag undid the knot and handed me the rope. "Easy, right? Now you try." Slowly I copied Mr. Pallywag's technique. My knot looked just like his when I was done. He took the rope and gave it a couple firm yanks. The knot held. "Great job, Carson. You're so smart. Now watch this." Mr. Pallywag held up the rope and snapped his fingers. To my amazement, the inside of the loop shimmered, blurred together, and rearranged into strange, kaleidoscopic shapes. "Wow!" I exclaimed. "Is that magic?" "Of course it is, Carson. Not only that, it's a portal that goes directly to the party. Here, have a look." Mr. Pallywag held out the rope and I leaned in closer to see. There was a large room on the other side of the portal. The room was brightly decorated and filled wall to wall with people. Most of them were kids. No sound came through the portal, but I could see people having animated conversations and laughing. What a party it was. It was everything I'd hoped it would be. There was cake and pizza and a ton of TVs with all my favorite movies and games on them. Everyone was having so much fun. I didn't see anyone who looked excluded or bullied or unwanted. It was like something out of a dream. A red-haired girl on the other side of the portal noticed me and enthusiastically waved hello. I waved back. The girl pointed me out to some of the other partygoers, and they all began beckoning me over. I couldn't hear them, but I could see their mouths moving as they shouted encouragement. For some reason, I couldn't stop staring at the girl. She looked vaguely familiar, but Mr. Pallywag yanked the rope away before I could figure out why. "Now," Mr. Pallywag began, "there are a few things we have to do before we can go to the party. Are you ready?" "Uh-huh." "Great. First, you'll need your invitation." Mr. Pallywag cleared his throat, grinned a wide, toothy smile, and took a deep bow. Carson, on the most momentous of days, I hereby offer you an exclusive invitation to the greatest party there ever is, was, or will be, good for whenever, wherever, whatever, and forever. Do you accept? I giggled and said, yes. A soft wind blew through the trees. Something changed. Something subtle. A muffled static in the air. A slight shift to the left. A delay so tiny, no one would ever notice. The only word I can think of to describe it is magic settling in. Old and powerful magic mankind chose to leave behind. I didn't like it. Wonderful, Mr. Pallywag said, clapping his hands. Just 2 more steps and you can go to the party. The first one's easy. All you have to do is pick a tree. I nodded and began inspecting the nearby trees in turn. Midway through my search, something in the forest stole my attention. I squinted and leaned towards it to get a better look. It was a yellow strip of police tape. The strip blew gently in the breeze, tracing lazy shapes in the air. It marked the spot where I'd seen the swinging thing last time. I frowned and turned back to Mr. Pallywag. He was still smiling, but there was something hard in his eyes. Something wrong, Carson? No. Good. Which tree did you pick? Despite a sudden sense of unease, I pointed at my tree. Mr. Pallywag walked me over to it and positioned me under one of the branches. The branch looked thick and sturdy. Good choice, Carson. Very good choice. Mr. Pallywag nodded in approval and showed me the portal again. The red-haired girl was there waiting for me. She shot me a huge, sincere smile and held up a slice of cake. It was my favorite. A corner piece of red velvet with tons of icing. The icing had even been lathered into a big letter C, just for me. Hey, Mr. Pallywag, I said, unable to contain my curiosity. Who's that girl? Oh, that's Jenny. She's a very good friend of mine. Do you two know each other? The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I shook my head. Well, you'll get to know each other soon enough. Just one last step, and you'll be at the party. What is it? It's very easy. Just put your head through the loop and close your eyes real tight. An intense, shaky feeling shot through my body. I took an involuntary step back. What's wrong? Mr. Pallywag asked. Everyone's waiting. See? His smile didn't waver as he pointed at the portal. All of the partygoers were gathered in a big crowd. They were clapping and chanting something. I couldn't hear them, but I knew it was my name. I instinctively scanned their faces. It didn't take me long to find the one I was looking for. When he caught me looking at him, he held a finger to his lips and winked. Eli. I felt the blood drain from my face as I backed away from the rope. Mr. Pallywag chuckled. It's okay, Carson, he said, his voice as friendly as ever. I won't lie, it's scary at first, but don't worry. When it's done, you get to stay at the party forever. Just you, me, and all of our friends. Doesn't that sound fun? Mr. Pallywag's grin widened. I'd never realized how big he was before. About the size of a grizzly bear, maybe even bigger. I wanted to run, but I'd seen how fast he was. There was no way I'd be able to get away from him. I thought about the night Dad read me Alice, about the long hug he gave me, and the tear rolling down my cheek. With as much courage as I could muster, I shook my head. I don't want to go to the party anymore. Don't be silly, Carson. Everyone wants to go to the party. I don't. Carson? I shook my head again. Mr. Pallywag stopped smiling. Did you know I could see the future, Carson? He asked in a low growl. I saw yours the moment I met you. Want to know what I saw? No. It's so awful it makes me want to cry, he said, his mouth contorting into a massive frown. You're always a little bit different, a little bit off. People don't notice it at first, but they always find out. And when they do, they abandon you. Shut up, you're lying. No, I'm not, Mr. Pallywag droned, an annoyed teacher lecturing his student. You're going to end up all alone, Carson. No lovers, no friends. Eventually, you won't even have a family. No mommy or daddy or Uncle Dan. Nothing but a slow, depressing slide into endless misery. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Don't fight it, Carson. You already know I'm right. Something rustled in the woods. Dad's panicked voice echoed out soon after. Carson, Carson, where are you? The corner of Mr. Pallywag's mouth flickered. I started to yell, but Mr. Pallywag was on me in a flash. I closed my eyes and waited for the rope to close around my neck. To my surprise, Mr. Pallywag just clasped his hand over his mouth. When I opened my eyes, he was grinning at me again. You already accepted the invitation, he said. Just follow the steps when you change your mind. I nodded, too afraid to do anything else. Mr. Pallywag chuckled, uncovered my mouth, and walked away. Goodbye, Carson. See you soon. In the blink of an eye, Mr. Pallywag was gone. Dad burst out of the trees moments later. When he saw me, he nearly bowled me over and wrapped me in a hug so tight, I thought my spine would snap. Thank God, Dad kept whispering. Thank you, God. Thank you. I didn't say anything. Dad took me home. Mom held me close, and none of us ever discussed the incident again. We were too relieved to jinx the miracle. The move went as planned. I never went back to those woods again. I did my best to move on, tried to make friends, even attempted dating a few times. But so far, Mr. Pallywag's been right. Nobody stays. My parents are still alive, but we don't talk much anymore. Uncle Dan's dead. I talk to my coworkers a little, but I'm basically alone. Sometimes on really bad nights, I pull out some rope and tie that special knot. I let the loop shimmer, peek through the portal, and watch the party. More people join every year. Jenny and Eli are still there. They haven't aged a day. They look happy. Mr. Pallywag is there too, of course. He always knows when I'm watching. He stops what he's doing, looks me in the eye, and waves at me. I wave back. When he knows he has my full attention, he claps his hands and leads his guests in a mad dance. He whirls among them, hat in hand, dancing and singing and laughing. The party guests follow along, delirious with glee. I've tried to find a flaw with the party, an ulterior motive, or a sign that it's part of some sinister master plan. The problem is, it's perfect. Nobody disappears. Nobody's in pain. There's nothing there but fun and games and acceptance and love. Even though it's hard, I don't want to give up. I tell myself stories where I'm the hero, and no matter how dark it gets, I have to live. It's worked for a while, but every year gets harder, and deep down, I'm scared Mr. Pallywag was right. It's not if I go to the party. It's when. Last night, when this woman came into the ER of Riverside General, I didn't think it was anything out of the ordinary. People show up bloody and incoherent all the time. But this woman, Emma, was different. She was wearing a green military jacket, the lining slashed to ribbons as if she'd attacked it with a kitchen knife. She'd fractured 3 ribs and gouged her arms raw. But the thing was still on her, clinging like it had been sewn into her skin. I've been a nurse for 14 years. I've seen addicts rip out IVs and men twice my size foam at the mouth. But what Emma said shook me to my core, and for the first time in my life, I believed evil might exist. Blood bubbled from between her teeth, and in a gruff voice that didn't sound like it belonged to her, she said, "James, Perry wants to know if Kathy's okay. Tell me she's okay." I'm getting ahead of myself here. I haven't slept in over 24 hours, so you can understand. Roughly a year ago, I was working the graveyard shift. It was 3:15 in the morning, and the doors of the ER flew open. A family of 4 was rushed in, all of them with gunshot wounds. 2 of the 4 family members were already DOA. An old man in his late 70s and a woman in her 40s. The old man was from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He had shot his whole family. One of the family members was still conscious, a man named Perry. We were trying to stop the bleeding when he gripped my arm and whispered, "Is Kathy okay? Tell me she's okay." Kathy was Perry's wife, and she was already gone. None of the family members lived. No one but me, Perry, and the other medical professionals in the room that morning know that he asked me that, and Perry died 30 seconds after I lied and told him she was going to make it. So when Emma asked me the same question, yeah, it chilled me to the bone. How could she have known? How did she even know my name? I haven't been able to shake it since. So once we got Emma sedated and placed her in restraints, I went to the waiting room to let her boyfriend, Ryan, know that Emma was stable. All he asked me was, "Is the jacket off?" It was, and I told him as much. We had put it in a hazardous waste bag, which is why it was so much weirder when I went back to her room, and the jacket was on the chair next to her. Its sleeve brushed my arm as I stepped closer, sticky with dried blood. I couldn't imagine any of the hospital staff would put a bloody jacket back in the room. It didn't make any sense. That's when I noticed Emma's eyes were open, like she was staring into my soul. "Tell me what happened to Kathy, James." Her voice gruff again. "How do you know about that?" I asked her. Her eyes closed and she fell back asleep. I moved through the halls asking anyone and everyone on staff who had put the jacket back in Emma's room, but no one seemed to know what I was talking about. It got to the point where I started getting strange looks. One of my colleagues asked if I was feeling okay. I wasn't. I'm still not. I went back to the room and the jacket was gone. So then I checked the storage room. The jacket back in the hazardous waste bag. I have no clue how it got there. I was afraid I was losing it. I was told to go home and get some rest. I didn't want to. I needed to figure out what the hell was going on. But I was basically forced to leave. I went back home. I had a couple drinks. Think I just needed to relax. But I stayed up all night, with thoughts of Emma and Perry. I couldn't understand how they were connected. It was proof of an afterlife. I'd seen people die over and over, and now it felt like evidence that we didn't simply cease to exist. That maybe the people I loved, someone I'd lost, might not be gone forever. My mind infected. Which is why I decided to go to the house where Perry and his family were murdered. The house had sat vacant since the murders, which made it easy to slip in through the back. I used the butt of a flashlight and a rag to smash a small pane in the back door. When I first entered, I felt a shift. Even with the morning light sneaking through the windows, it was dark. My chest got tight. I told myself it was because I knew what had happened in this home. I walked through the living room. The floorboards creaked every other step. I was climbing the stairs to the second level when I suddenly smelled something metallic. It made my stomach twist. It was the scent of blood flooding my nostrils. Then Perry stumbled through the foyer below, bleeding profusely. In an instant he vanished, and then gunshots rang out. I sprinted up the stairs as quickly as I could, my hearing fuzzy. It felt like ice was rushing through my veins, and before I knew it, I had ducked inside a bedroom down the hallway. I'm not exactly sure how long I had been sitting in the darkened room when the closet door across from me slowly swung all the way open. It came to a stop when it bumped gently up against the wall. I could only see children's clothes hanging inside. A soft voice from inside the closet said, "Hey, come here." Then a child's pale arm protruded out from between the hanging clothes and waved me towards the closet. There was no way I was going over there. The child whispered again, "We need to hide. Grandpa's acting weird." I was terrified, both by what he said, but also the thought of moving toward the closet. I came to the house for answers, though, so I went over to the closet. I stopped right in front of it. I couldn't see past the clothes. They prevented me from seeing anything beyond them. I could either leave or wonder forever what I would find out. So I parted the hanging fabrics and crawled inside. I didn't see the boy. I looked behind me, to my left, right. "Hello?" I said quietly. He wasn't there. The hair stood up all over my body. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight, and the boy appeared out of thin air, covering the light with his hand. "No," he hissed. There I sat, face to face with a ghost. "When's my mom coming back? She said we would leave after dinner." His big eyes looking up at me, I realized he was scared. "Do you know a woman named Hannah?" I asked him. The look on his face shifted. His fear vanished, replaced by a strange recognition. "You know who I'm talking about, don't you?" He stayed silent. I could tell he knew something. "She was my wife." I can't tell you how badly I wanted him to say something, and I think he was about to. Then he heard furious footsteps pounding up the stairs from below, and I snapped back to being scared. "Shh." He cut me off with a harsh whisper. He backed himself further into the closet, hiding as best as he could. His bedroom door flung open and smacked into the wall. I could barely see out from behind the clothes, but I had a sliver of a vantage point and caught sight of someone walking in. "Joshua?" An old man's voice called out. I heard a rifle being cocked. I couldn't see him anymore, but I could hear his footsteps. It felt like forever, but must have only been a few seconds when he moved back into my line of sight. He turned slowly toward the closet. "Joshua, are you in there?" He walked over to us methodically. I could hear my heartbeat, thumping like a freight train. I looked to the little boy whose eyes were shut tight. I looked back out to the room, and the old man was settled right in front of the closet. Something fell to the ground. It was dentures. The old man said something, but it was mumbled. He reached down and his hand was covered in blistered sores. He snatched up his dentures and popped them back into his mouth because I could understand what he said next. "Close your eyes." I looked over to the boy. He was gone. When I turned back, the old man was standing right in front of me. The hanging clothes slid aside on their own, and the barrel of a rifle leveled with my face. It was a split second, but I swear he was wearing the same green jacket Emma had tried to slash off herself. Then just like that, he fired the gun. I saw the spark of the barrel and heard the crack of the chamber right before I closed my eyes tight. I felt something hot and sharp tear across my cheek. I was still screaming when I opened my eyes back up. The room was suddenly empty. The old man was gone. The silence was so complete it felt unreal. For a moment, I thought maybe it hadn't happened. Then I felt it, a warm trickle sliding down my face. I touched my cheek. My fingertips came away red. Blood. My blood. This was proof. Proof that something beyond our world existed, and that jacket has something to do with it. I left and I didn't drive home. I went back to the ER. I walked the halls to the storage room where I last saw the jacket, but the jacket was gone. The bag it was in, empty. It must have moved, I thought. It must have gone back to Emma's room. I walked in and she was asleep. My eyes scanned the room for the jacket. It wasn't anywhere to be seen. Emma's eyes snapped open. "Where am I?" she said. The look in her eye was different. She looked around the room, completely lost, innocent and scared. Then all the lights in the ER went out. It was suddenly pitch black. The noise of panic began to swell into the room from outside. Then I smelled smoke. Cigar smoke. It was strong. So strong that I began coughing, choking on it. The red glow of a lit cigar appeared. Its embers shed just enough light for me to make out the face of the old man, where Emma had just been. The lights came back on and it was Emma again. The innocent look in her eyes. It was like she was looking into my soul. "Ryan has it," she said in that gruff voice. Then she said, "I can help you talk to Hannah again." I didn't even say anything. I couldn't. I was too tempted. I would have let her go. So here I am, sitting behind the steering wheel of my car in the ER parking lot. I don't know what to do next. Do I go inside and let Emma out? Should I go find Ryan? I don't know what to do. If you don't hear from me again, it means something awful has happened. And if that's the case, let the police know that James, the ER nurse from Riverside General, is probably dead. Or worse. The blizzard was supposed to last 2 days. Then 2 became 3. Then I was on day 4, holed up in my cabin. The only thing I could see outside was the snow, a white, shifting void that obscured the rest of the mountain range. I looked for the stars out of habit, but they were gone, buried behind layers of storm. The sky was black, thick with cloud and snow and the night. The tree line, usually clear, was faint now. A smudge of darkness barely separated nature from the cabin. The thick snow blurred the edges, turning trees into shadows that shifted with the wind. What had once been a sharp, familiar boundary was now lost in the white of the snow and darkness of the night. I was ready, at least. Before the storm hit, I'd driven down the mountain to the nearby town to stock up on supplies, like I always do. I filled my good old F-150 with food, water, and anything else I might need to ride out the worst of it. Back at the clearing off the cabin, I chopped firewood. I've already got enough stacked to last through a second ice age, but it gives me something to do, something to break up the quiet. All aspects of it, the rhythmic thunk of the axe hitting wood, the smell of fresh pine, the way the pile grows bigger with every swing. It all keeps me from thinking too much. I don't get visitors. That's not me being dramatic, it's just fact. The nearest neighbor is a 40-minute drive down the mountain, and that's when the roads are clear, which they're not, haven't been for days. That's why when I heard a knock, I nearly dropped the mug of cocoa I was holding. It wasn't loud, just 2 slow, deliberate raps on the door. Then nothing. I stood there in the kitchen for a few seconds, just listening, waiting to hear it again. The storm was still going strong outside, but underneath the wind, the silence settled again like a blanket. Neither a knock nor a voice calling out followed. I figured I imagined it, cabin fever and all that. Wouldn't be the first time, but I walked to the door anyway. Something in me wouldn't let it go. Could have been curiosity, or maybe I was just so goddamn starved for company that I wanted there to be someone out there. I opened the door, and there he was. A kid in his early 20s, maybe. He could have passed for a college student if he wasn't half frozen. His face was pale as paper, lips blue, eyes wide and glassy like he wasn't all there. Snow clung to his coat in heavy clumps, and he was shaking so hard his teeth were clacking together. "God," I said, before I even thought about it. He didn't answer, didn't even look at me, just stood there trembling in the doorway, like he didn't know where he was. I should have hesitated, should have asked what he was doing out in a blizzard, who he was, how he got up here. But I didn't. If I closed the door and he died out there, I'd never be able to live with myself. That part of me, The part that used to be a husband. The part that could have been a father one day. It's still there somewhere, even if it's quieter now. "Come in," I said. "Come on, let's get you warm." He stepped inside without a word. The wind slammed the door shut behind him. He left a trail of melting snow behind him as I led him to the fire. His boots were soaked through. I had him sit on the old armchair by the hearth while I threw a couple logs on and got the flames high. I asked if he was hurt. He didn't answer. "Can you talk?" I tried again. "Tell me your name." Still nothing. Just that 1,000-yard stare. Like he was looking through the fire. Past it. Like he saw something there I couldn't. He looked like hell. Skin pale and tight over the bone. Lips cracked. Nose bleeding just a little from the cold. I knelt down beside him to check for frostbite, and that's when I saw it. On his side, just below the ribs, his jacket torn and shirt soaked with blood, was a wound. A deep bite. Ragged, raw, and already turning dark around the edges. It wasn't new. A day old, maybe more. The skin around it was red and hot. "You didn't say you were bit," I muttered, more to myself than to him. He flinched when I touched it. First reaction I'd gotten out of him. His eyes snapped to mine, wild, just for a second. Then they went vacant again. It didn't look like a wolf bite. I've seen those before. Hell, I've seen worse. Back when I hunted more often. Wolves tear, rip, pull. This was cleaner. Too clean. I patched it up as best as I could. Cleaned it. Wrapped gauze tight around his ribs. He winced but didn't make a sound. Just watched me, breathing shallow. Like a cornered animal. After that, I set him up in the guest room. It had a bed, a thick blanket, and a space heater in the corner. He didn't say a word and just laid down, curled in on himself, eyes still wide open. I left him there, closed the door gently behind me. The cabin felt smaller after that, like he brought something in with him. A weight, a shift in the air. I tried to shake it. I made myself tea, sat by the fire, and held a book in my lap I didn't read. I checked on him an hour later. He was asleep, out cold. No fever, at least none I could feel. I left the door cracked just in case. I must have nodded off at some point. The fire was down to coals when I woke up. House quiet as the grave. I could hear the wind screaming against the windows. The old trees creaking out front, but nothing inside. No footsteps, no coughing, no movement from the guest room. I was just about to check again when I heard the floorboard creak. He was standing in the hall, just watching me. "Fuck," I said, nearly spilling my tea. He blinked slow, looked around like he wasn't sure where he was. "Sorry," he said, voice hoarse, dry. "Didn't mean to scare you." "It's all right," I said. "You're lucky to be alive. What the hell were you doing up here?" He scratched at his bandage. "Hiking," he said, "with my girlfriend Emma." I waited. "We were camping in the woods. Yesterday, no, a few nights before. Got caught in the storm. Thought we'd hunker down, ride it out." He stopped, his jaw tightened. "We heard something," he said, "outside the tent. I thought it was wolves, big ones. We stayed quiet, didn't move. But it didn't matter. They tore through the side." He swallowed hard, eyes wet now but not crying. "I ran. I didn't even see what they look like. Just teeth. It was wrong. Too many of them. Emma screamed and then..." His voice broke off. "You didn't see her after that?" He shook his head. "I ran until I couldn't. Then I saw your cabin." "You're safe now, kid. Just rest." He nodded, turned and walked back to the guest room like he was sleepwalking. I tried going back to sleep, even poured myself another mug of cocoa, just to have something warm in my hands. But the air felt heavier now, like it was pressing in on me, 1 inch at a time. Sometime after midnight, I heard the floor creak. I glanced up, expecting to see him again, maybe wandering the hall confused, but there was no one, just the faint sound of the bathroom door clicking shut at the end of the hall. The light spilled out in a thin line under the frame. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. The pipes groaned once, a long, low exhale, like the cabin itself was holding its breath. Then I heard glass break. I walked to the bathroom and cleared my throat loud enough for him to hear. No response. "You alright in there?" Still nothing. Steam started seeping out from under the door, slow and crawling, hugging the floor like smoke. It looked off, not sharp and white like a shower usually gives off. This was thicker, heavier, gray around the edges, like breath fogged on glass. I stood outside for another minute, then stepped closer. I pressed my knuckles to the door and knocked once, gently. "You hear me, son?" Silence. Not even the shuffle of movement. No cough, no running water. The wood felt cold beneath my hand, not warm like it should be with steam coming through, just still and dead and cold. I leaned in, pressed my ear to the door, listened. Nothing. Every instinct in me said walk away. Let it be. The boy had been through hell. Maybe he needed time. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he just broke the mirror by accident. Maybe I was imagining things again. But my gut had gone cold. And it wasn't from the storm. I wrapped my hand around the knob. It was slick with condensation. I turned it slowly, quiet as I could, until the latch gave way with a soft click. Then, holding my breath, I gently opened the door. What I saw shook me. The kid was split open vertically down the middle, bisected with a horrific precision that ran from the crown of his head through his nose, mouth, and sternum, all the way down to his groin. The bathroom looked like a butcher's block, the tiled floor underneath stained with something dark and moist. His two halves rested on the floor like broken mannequins, separated by a sickening foot of space. Ribs, stark white and splintered, jutted like snapped fences. Muscles, still glistening and unnervingly pink, hung in strips. The coiled lengths of intestine and the dull, spilled organs lay exposed and motionless on the floor, some still clinging to one half of the body. There was an emptiness where his spine should have been, a hollowed-out canyon running through his core. It was as if something massive had forced its way out. From the inside, the precision of the split, through bone and gristle, was alien. Wrong. Then, through the haze of shock, a draft hit me, a bone-deep cold that had nothing to do with the storm outside. My eyes, still wide and unfocused, slowly tracked it. The small bathroom window, unusually sealed tight against the mountain air, was shattered, not just cracked but exploded outward, as if something had exited through it. Jagged shards of glass glittered on the sill and floor. The fierce wind howled through the gap, bringing with it a stinging spray of snow. And from the half of the young man's body that was closer to a window, a trail began. A glistening, repulsive path of black and dark red slime snaked across the pristine white tiles, past the gurgling toilet, over the shattered glass, and through the broken window frame, disappearing into the white void of the blizzard. I thought it was blood, but it was thick, viscous, and seemed to pulsate faintly in the dim light, leaving an oily sheen in its wake. Whatever had been inside him, whatever had ripped him apart and then fled, had left this horrifying signature. I finally found my breath. It was a cold, panicked gasp that tasted of iron and the strange stink coming off the floor. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the split halves, off the black and red trail that snaked across the tiles. Every instinct screamed run, not down the mountain. I'd never make it, but away from this room. It was out there now, something that hid inside a man, then discarded the skin to crawl through a broken window into a night that would kill anything normal. The thought of it sliding down the mountain, of it reaching the small defenseless town I'd just driven through days ago, made adrenaline surge through paralysis. It couldn't make it to town. Not on my watch. My feet moved before my brain gave the order. I didn't bother closing the bathroom door. The horror had already escaped. I moved past the living room, where the cozy glow of the dying fire felt like a cruel joke, and into the master bedroom. I went straight to the closet, tucked behind my winter gear. Right where I always kept it was a Remington 870. I pulled it out, the cold steel of the pump action a familiar weight in my hands. I grabbed the box of double-aught buckshot from the shelf, spilling a handful of crimson shells onto the carpet. But I didn't stop to pick them up. I loaded the shotgun quickly, the sharp, metallic sound of the shells cutting through the roar of the wind. It had been years since I'd pointed a gun at anything that wasn't a deer, but looking at the slick, dark trail leading out of my house, I knew this wasn't hunting a living being. This was stopping something that was already dead, something that had worn death, then shed it. I wasn't a hero. I was just a widower with a cabin, a shotgun, and a terrifying realization. I was the last line of defense. The storm that had trapped me had trapped it, too, on the mountain. I held the shotgun steady, my knuckles white. The wind howled outside, the trees creaked. I checked the hall one last time, glanced at the horror show of the bathroom, then moved toward the front door. There was no plan. There was only the gun in my hands, worry in my heart, and the knowledge that something sinister was crawling through the snow toward civilization. I flipped the deadbolt and hit the door with my shoulder. The wind was a physical blow, a sudden, blinding white sheet that stole my breath and stung my eyes. The roar of the storm swallowed the world around. It was a complete whiteout. My eyes searched frantically for the trail. The front porch was already buried under a fresh dirt, but I knelt down, shielding my face against the immediate sting of the snow. There it was, still outside the bathroom window on the other side of the perimeter. The oily black and crimson slime was already freezing, but it hadn't been buried yet. It was distinct, lying on the otherwise clean snow like spilled ink. It didn't just drip. It looked like something had slithered. I followed it, sinking immediately into the drifts up to my knees. The air was so cold it burned my lungs. I kept the Remington high. Its barrel was a dark, steady presence against the blinding white. The trail, glowing in width as I followed it, led past the woodpile and headed directly for the tree line. The trees themselves were black specters against the night, swaying and groaning under the weight of the snow. I fought against the resistance of the deep snow, pushing myself faster, driven by the metallic reek of the slime that, even in the freezing air, seemed to linger. I was maybe 20 yards from the cabin, battling a sudden, heavy gust, when I saw it. At first I thought it was a buck driven mad by the storm. It was easily that size, low to the ground, its dark shape barely discernible in the whirling vortex of snow where the cabin's clearing met the forest edge. But it didn't move like a deer. It didn't trot or bound. It scuttled. It was hunkered down, its massive body creating a brief moment of stillness in the blizzard, a small black shadow against the white fury. I stopped dead, sinking deeper into the drift. I raised the shotgun, pushing the safety off with a dry click. Through the shifting veil of snow, I strained to make out details, and the details I found were strange. It was hairy, thick black fur, matted and clotted. The fur was plastered down in clumps, matted thick with the same crimson slime that lined the floor of my bathroom. Its bulk seemed to be expanding, the hair giving it an immense, distorted volume, but the low, hunched posture suggested it was something that preferred to crawl. It had multiple limbs, too many, working in sync to move it along the ground, thick, jointed appendages that glistened unnervingly. The sight was a sickening contradiction, the heavy, dense covering of fur mixed with the raw, unnatural sheen of the slime. It looked like a living, wet wound covered in an animal's coat. Then it lifted something. Its head. I realized with a shudder of pure dread. It was impossibly large and angular, but I couldn't discern a face. Then the wind cleared the snow just enough for me to see a flash of wet, sickly red where eyes or a mouth should have been, reflecting the distant, faint light from my cabin window. It didn't see me. It seemed focused entirely on the darkness of the tree line, already beginning to merge with the shadows. It was moving, still low and fast, dragging its huge, repulsive body away from the cabin and toward the mountain pass that led to town. I gripped the shotgun, ignoring the trembling of my own body. The blizzard made the shot difficult, but the distance was short. If I let it reach the shelter of the trees, it would be gone. I took the slack out of the trigger. There was no hesitation left in me, just the immediate, primal need to stop this monstrosity before it vanished. I squeezed the trigger. The sound of the Remington going off was deafening, a violent boom that shattered the stillness of the storm. The flash of the muzzle momentarily burned the image of the creature into my retina. I felt the powerful kick of the shotgun against my shoulder, and a split second later, the buckshot slammed into the creature's massive torso. It didn't go down. Instead, the thing let out a sound that cut right through the howling wind, a screaming wail that was entirely inorganic, like tearing metal on a wet, ripping canvas. It was a noise of pain, but also of inhuman rage, and it sent a spike of pure terror through my chest. The section of its body where the shot hit seemed to absorb the impact, scattering a spray of the thick, dark slime and a few clumps of matted hair into the air. It scrambled, the monstrous body, for all its bulk, moved with terrifying speed, abandoning the relatively clear ground and lunging into the dense black of the tree line. I pumped the action, ejecting the spent shell and loading a fresh round. Clack, chunk. I didn't wait to see if it was mortally wounded. I just knew I had to keep it moving, keep it from burrowing down or reaching the pass. I plunged into the forest after it, following the fresh, dark disturbance in the snow. The trees offered a brief, deceptive shield from the worst of the wind, but the snow was deeper here, making every step a labor. I focused only on the trail, the churned snow, the scattered slime, the deep, heavy indentations of its multiple limbs. I ran until my lungs burned, until the cold made the skin on my face ache, until the sounds of its desperate, laborious breathing were drowned out by my own. Then I stopped. The trail vanished. One moment I was following a distinct line of destruction. The next, the snow was pristine, only marked by my own clumsy boot prints. I moved forward a few more steps, scanning the blizzard-shrouded ground, wondering if the heavy snow had worked against me and buried the signs, but no, the trail had slowly faded. It had ended completely, as if the creature had simply dissolved into the air. I rotated slowly, the shotgun trembling slightly in my grip, my eyes uselessly searching the area around me. My breath hitched. I caught it only as an indistinct smear of shadow, a sudden movement in my peripheral vision. High above me, I tilted my head back, staring up into the shifting, wind-whipped canopy of the pines. There was no ground trail because the trail had continued up. The dark, oily slime wasn't on the snow anymore. It was smeared high on the bark of the nearest trees, running in sickening, vertical streaks. The monster hadn't been slowed. It had simply used the vertical space the forest offered. It had the high ground. It was above, hidden by the night, and the dense pine needles, and I was exposed beneath it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had gone from the hunter to the obvious, slow-moving target. I scanned the dark trunks of the nearest pines, searching for any break, any shelter that might afford me a moment of cover. About 10 feet away, a massive, ancient pine had been partially uprooted long ago, its gnarled root system exposed. The dirt and thick, woody roots had formed a dark, protective cave against the elements. I dove toward it, dropping to my hands and knees in the snow. I wedged myself into the space beneath the largest root, pulling the shotgun close to my chest, my back pressed against the cold, frozen earth. I held perfectly still, straining my ears against the wind, forcing myself to shrink into the shadows and the earth. It was silent again, save for the storm. The vast, black space between the high branches and the low earth was now where the true danger lay. I looked up through an opening in the uplifted roots, seeing only the tangled darkness. I waited for a drop of slime, a tremor of a branch, or the silent, horrifying moment when the massive, hairy, glistening shape would descend. I stayed perfectly still, trying to slow the panicked rush of my breath. The silence, punctuated only by the wind, was unbearable. The creature was somewhere above, hunting for the man that had just fired the loud, disruptive weapon. Then the snow began to sift down, not from the storm, but from the branches above. Chunks fell, followed by a sudden, heavy thud just yards away. It had dropped. The creature was on the ground again, but now it wasn't scrambling away. It was waddling, a fast, deliberate, low-to-the-earth movement, like a massive, glistening insect trying to appear harmless. Its bulk seemed even more immense, now that it was no longer distorted by the heights, and I could hear the wet, squelching sound of its many appendages on the snow. It moved slowly into the small clearing around my hiding spot. I was pressed so tightly against the frozen roots that the wood dug painfully into my spine, but I didn't dare flinch. I had already positioned the Remington. My shooting hand gripped the trigger. The barrel angled slightly up and out toward the opening of the root cave, resting against the snow-covered ground. The creature's movement was erratic, darting toward the tree line one moment, then pulling back. Why hasn't it found me? Then I realized it wasn't looking for me. Its massive, misshapen head was constantly sniffing the air, lifting and twisting with jerky movements. The air was thick with the howling blizzard and the scent of damp pine and frozen earth. The storm was masking my scent. The wind and the heavy, blowing snow were scattering and nullifying my presence, covering the fresh trace of gunpowder and adrenaline. I was lucky. The storm had become my unintentional ally. After a few minutes, the sniffing paid off, the waddling ceased, and its massive, slimy, hairy form turned directly toward my root cave. It approached the gap between the thick roots, filling the dark space with its bulk. It was so close I could feel the minute vibrations of its weight disturbing the ground. And then, its head lowered. The snow cleared just long enough for me to see the details I hadn't been able to discern in the blizzard. Its head was roughly the size of a buck or moose skull, but hideously wrong. The bone structure was too broad, too blunt. It had no discernible eyes, just wide swaths of slick, wet flesh the color of old blood. It wasn't just fur that covered it. Its thick, dark hair was matted with the slime, forming a repulsive, heavy mane. Interspersed within this mane was a horrifying number of short, glistening, leech-like appendages that writhed slightly in the cold air, tasting and searching. Then, it was inches from my face. I could smell the metallic stench of the black slime mixed with the sour, coppery odor of raw meat. I was looking into the mouth of the nightmare that had walked out of a man. One of the slick, worm-like appendages darted out, brushing against the tip of my nose. In that instant, it knew. The thing recoiled slightly, its large, blunt head drawing back, the wet flesh of its face tightening into an expression of immediate, primal recognition. The meal was found, the obstacle identified. It was about to strike. I didn't let it. I drove the barrel of the Remington up and sideways, the muzzle nearly touching the side of its monstrous head. The blast was muffled and wet, an awful, contained thunder. The buckshot tore into the creature's skull from below and the thing erupted, a horrifying geyser of black slime, wet fur, and bone fragments sprayed into the roots above me. The creature shuddered once, a massive, muscular tremor, before its great weight collapsed. It didn't fall on me, thankfully, but it landed directly outside my hiding spot, its massive body completely blocking the entrance. I lowered the shotgun, the noise of the ringing in my ears louder than the wind. I was trapped beneath a mountain of steaming, reeking horror. The ringing in my ears faded slowly, replaced by the sickening sound of hot, wet matter sizzling on frozen snow. I was entombed. The creature's immense cooling mass was pressed up against the root system, sealing the entrance to my makeshift bunker. I could hear the wind now, muffled by the sheer volume of dead, hairy flesh. I lowered the hammer on the shotgun slowly, my entire body shaking with a delayed, violent reaction. The smell was overwhelming now, a blast of copper, sulfur, and the sour stink of the creature's slime. The muzzle of the Remington was coated in gore. I had to get out. If the blizzard kept up, I'd be trapped here beneath a rotting carcass until the spring melt. I shoved the shotgun's barrel against the creature's flank, testing the weight. No movement. It was like pushing a felled, waterlogged oak tree. I shifted my weight, reaching with my free hand, and finally found the edge of the root that had protected me. I pressed my shoulder against the dirt wall and pushed, straining. The corpse moved an inch, then sank back. I had to try a different way. I turned the shotgun around and used the thick, heavy butt of the stock to scrape away the dirt and packed snow behind me, burrowing deeper into the root system. The ground was hard and frozen, but the shotgun butt gave me just enough leverage to widen a small, cramped gap between two lateral roots. Gasping, I barely squeezed through the opening. I emerged on the far side of the massive pine, away from the creature's bulk. I stood up slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my temples, and walked back over to look at the kill. It lay motionless, its multi-limbed body contorted awkwardly on the snow, but something was wrong. Where the head had been, there was only a ruin of black fur and pulped bone, yet a thin, milky white steam was rising from the wound, and then I noticed the blood, or lack of it. It wasn't bleeding out. The dark, black-red slime was only slowly oozing, congealing almost immediately in the bitter cold. The buckshot had caused massive trauma, but the creature's internal volume seemed insufficient for its size. It felt like I had shot a sack of thick fluid rather than a complex biological organism. My eyes caught something on the creature's massive flank. Where the first blast of buckshot had hit, the matted fur had been stripped clean, revealing the skin beneath. It was pale, slick, and thin, stretched tight over the enormous frame. The skin was visibly healing, slowly knitting itself back together. The gaping holes from the shot were shrinking, the raw, pink-red tissue pulling toward a center point. It was a terrifying, impossible regeneration. The steam wasn't from cooling blood. It was from a burning internal process. My breath hitched. The entire premise of this battle, that a shotgun could stop it, was a lie. I had maybe 10 minutes before it was functional again. I had to get back to the cabin, not just for ammunition, but for something heavier, something more final. I turned and ran like a madman, the snow swallowing my footing, the low branches whipping my face. The familiar trek back to the cabin was a blur of white and black, driven by the cold fear that the monster would simply stand up behind me. I burst through the door, slamming it shut and throwing the deadbolt. Though I knew a simple piece of metal wouldn't hold that bulk for long, I raced past the silent horror of the bathroom and into the storage closet. I didn't grab the deer rifle. A bullet was a coin toss, but fire was a guarantee. Tucked behind the winter tires were 2 red 5-gallon jerry cans, one for the snowmobile, one for the backup generator. I grabbed a can of kerosene too. It would burn slower and hotter than gasoline, and yanked it out. Next, I needed a wick. I dove into the kitchen, grabbing the thickest rag I could find, a towel used for drying dishes, and stuffed it into my pocket. The light was my last stop. I opened the kitchen drawer and snatched a long, thin butane lighter, used for starting the pilot light. I was ready, but not fast enough. The quiet, heavy silence I'd endured for the past few minutes was broken by a sound I'd only heard when cutting down trees. A slow, heavy, ripping sound coming from the side of the cabin. The side where the bathroom window was. It had found its way back. The hole it had created to exit the young man's body wasn't large enough for its current monstrous size, and it was trying to climb through the window. It was tearing the wall apart. I could hear the sickening crunch of frozen pine breaking and the sound of thick wood snapping. I had to assume it was fully healed, or close enough to it. The storm, which had given me cover, now threatened to bury me inside of my own cabin if I wasn't careful. I had to take the fire to the monster. I yanked the door open, the kerosene can heavy and cold in my hands, and plunged back out into the blizzard. The creature wasn't at the door. I rounded the corner of the cabin, the heavy kerosene sloshing, and saw the damage. A huge section of the wall near the bathroom was ruined, wood splintered, and insulation streaming out like cotton guts. The creature was there, its massive, steaming head pulled back from the shredded wall. It saw me instantly. The bluff of the blizzard had been called. I was standing in the open, and it was less than 20 feet away. It began its repulsive, slow waddle towards me. Its limbs churned the snow. The black slime glistened. Its regenerating head tilted low. It was honed in on me. I dropped to a knee, pulling the heavy can close. I twisted the plastic cap off, then tore the towel from my pocket, shoving one end into the neck of the can to soak. The stench of the oil and the creature's musk mingled horribly in the cold air. The monster was 10 feet away. I didn't try to aim. I just tipped the heavy can and began to drench the path between us as I walked backwards. I emptied half the 5 gallons in a wide, black arc right into the snow and across the creature's forelimbs. The kerosene didn't mix with the snow. It simply stained it, turning the white ground into a shimmering black slick. The creature didn't stop. It waddled right through the flammable pool, its greasy fur absorbing the oil. As the beast closed the distance, close enough now that I could feel the steam emanating off its bulk, I pulled the soaked towel out, threw the can aside, and flicked the butane lighter. The thin blue flame fought the wind for a fraction of a second, then held. With a final, desperate roar to myself, I lit the kerosene-soaked rag like a torch, and threw it directly at the monster. It hit the creature's torso, and the effect was instantaneous and brutal. The oil-soaked fur and the slick, saturated snow trail ignited with a violent whoosh. The flames were furious, a shocking blast of orange and red against the white snow. The creature was engulfed in a terrible, screaming pillar of fire. The kerosene and the creature's own slick, greasy essence fed the flames instantly, making them burn with a blinding, hot intensity. The monster shrieked, a sound of agony and pure animal terror, and began to thrash violently in the fire. It wasn't waddling anymore. It was rolling in the snow, trying to beat out the inferno. Fortunately for me, the flame stuck to its oiled coat like glue. It was a chaotic, burning silhouette against the backdrop of the swirling blizzard. The thick, black smoke was lost immediately in those swirling whites. I backed away. The heat of the fire was shocking contrast to the bitter cold. I watched the creature convulse, unable to stop the burning, unable to heal what was being systematically destroyed. The smell of burning hair, oil, and something metallic sweet was nauseating. Finally, after a minute that felt like an hour, the thrashing stopped. The creature lay still, a massive, charred monument to my desperate resolve. The fire still raged, but the movement was gone. I leaned against the icy wood of the cabin, the shotgun forgotten at my feet. The flames were already starting to melt a ring of snow around the body, but the blizzard continued to rage. The intense heat from the burning carcass was already beginning to recede, fighting a losing battle against the continuous onslaught of the blizzard. I stood for a moment, letting the sheer exhaustion wash over me, before the pragmatism and determination of the mountain man kicked in. The fire was dying, and what was left of this thing couldn't be allowed to heal, or even to rot here. I grabbed the heavy kerosene can and emptied the rest of its contents onto the smoldering pile, coaxing the flames back into a furious, consuming roar. I moved the equipment inside, then returned to the blazing carcass with my axe. It took a sickening 15 minutes of hacking and separating what little was left of the creature's bulk. I dragged the black, escaping chunks through the snow and tossed them back into the heart of the blaze. The air was thick with the stench of oil and the sweet, terrible smell of burning meat. I was purging the mountain of this evil. When I was done, only a patch of melted snow and a few glowing embers remained. I stood over the pyre, the axe handle cold in my numb hands, watching the last of the embers fade into the furious white. I turned, intending to head back inside, lock the doors, and face the grim reality of the split body in the bathroom. That's when I heard it. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't the groan of a tree. It was a faint, wet, screaming wail, identical to the sound the creature had made when the buckshot first hit it. The sound of ripping canvas and tearing metal. It came from the same direction as the first time, from the depths of the tree line, from where the young man had come. I spun around, bringing the axe up like a shield, searching the blinding, swirling storm. My mind immediately went to the rifle, the thing I had left behind in the house in my haste. I had nothing but a bloody, snow-covered axe and a dead fire. The wail came again, closer this time, high-pitched and choked. I took a step backward, preparing to fight, when a memory finally pierced the fog of panic. The young man's vacant eyes, the young man's story. Hiking with my girlfriend, Emma. Fuck. Like the title states, anytime I buy something, I always read the reviews beforehand. It's the only way to know if it's any good. But as the enshittification of the internet progresses, these reviews are becoming less and less helpful. I mean, how honest are they going to be for a product called Rhea Bio Collagen Real Deep Mask, Hydrogel Overnight Mask, Korean Skincare, Stocking stuffers for girlfriend and wife. Like 0%. They're all botted to hell. Regardless, I do it anyways. I mean, there's gotta be some real people reviewing this junk. It's better than buying something with 0 reviews. or a bunch of negative ones. To preface this, I just moved into my first apartment last week. It's a bit scary knowing that I'm broke and only have the absolute basics. TV, entertainment stand, couch, bed, etc., etc. But oh well, it is what it is. I'll just buy a little at a time until it's fully furnished and looking gorgeous. My goal is to eventually work my way up to the ultimate luxury, an espresso maker. First order of business is getting a toaster. Yes, a toaster. Call me weird, but I love toast. I've been eating it almost every day for breakfast since I was a kid. Any toast aficionado knows that the best way is butter only. No jam or jelly or anything weird like Marmite. So, yes, a toaster will be my first treat of many. I start looking on Amazon and, almost immediately, find a cheap toaster with somewhat decent reviews. 4.3 stars with 8K reviews isn't bad. Let's see what people are saying. Great toaster if you need something basic. $25 and it works. Doug MacArthur. It toasts, lol. Secret_broil. Fantastic little appliance. Perfect for breakfast. Jeremy M. Good enough for me. I'll go ahead and get it. Should only be a few days until it arrives. Sure enough, a few days later, I get home from work and my package has arrived. Call me a nerd, but I am so excited for this thing. I might even have me a little late night toast excursion. I set the toaster up and, what do you know? It doesn't work. I plugged it in, put my bread in, pulled the handle down, and nothing. What a piece of crap. At least Amazon has a good return policy. That night, as I start the return process and begin looking for a new toaster, the busted one starts making a clicking sound. I'm talking loud too. Just click, 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 click. Drove me nuts for a few minutes until I unplugged the thing. What's weird is that it was hot, and the lever wasn't pulled down either. But that's what you get for ordering some crap that was probably made for $2. I finally find a new one, something pretty similar, and at this point, I'm pretty irritated, so I don't even check the reviews this time. I just click buy, put my phone on the charger, brush my teeth, take off my makeup, and go to bed. As expected, another few days roll by and I'm chilling on the couch when there's a single knock on my door. I open it and voila, new toaster. I still have to return the old one, but I'll do it later. I have 30 days. It's not like the one I have is haunted or anything. A week goes by and thankfully, I finally have my third day off since moving in. At least this time it is paying off. As I sit in my bed rotting, aka watching TikToks and eating chips all day, I look around and notice how bland my bedroom is. I mean, it looks like a dude's room. I need to get some color or something in here. Maybe an accent wall would be nice. So I go on Home Depot's website and look at paint. Exciting, I know. And I'm thinking a nice pop of ocean blue would be perfect. But I don't want to get some crap where the paint flakes off. So I find a brand and color I like. And of course I read the reviews. Beautiful color. Was exactly what I was looking for. The cottage has never looked better. Mary. Went on beautifully. Color was better than I expected too. Perfect for when you just need to liven a dreary room. Jeremy M. It's paint, what do you expect? Home Depot customer. Alright, well, Home Depot customer sounds like a bit of an asshole. But I think I'll go with this one. I order it and... a week? It's going to take a week? That's some BS, but whatever, I guess. In the meantime, maybe I'll go on Etsy and get some cute new earrings too. I mean, I can't let my apartment's soon-to-be prettiness show me up. Again, I hear the clicking of the toaster. Click, 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 click. I go to the kitchen and... it's plugged in. And it's hot. Almost unbearably so. How the hell is that possible? Something is weird here. I could have sworn that I unplugged it. I need to return this thing tomorrow. Regardless, I go back to my room and hop on Etsy. After only a few minutes, I find the most adorable little silver snake earrings. I mean, they aren't everyone's cup of tea, but apparently I like reptiles in mine. Now I bet you'll guess what's coming next. Cue drum roll. The reviews. Got them for a friend's birthday. She loves them. Kirsten. Talk about quality. I've been buying from Sam Slithers for a few years now, and they've never disappointed. 6 stars if I could. Goose Gobbler. Absolutely fantastic. Truly, I mean, why would you want your new apartment to be prettier than you? Jeremy M. What was that last comment? Who would say something like that? I look through my recent purchases on every website, and the same name keeps popping up. Jeremy M. Even with the second toaster I bought. He reviewed that. Great toaster, especially if the earlier one is on the fritz. The clicking drives me nuts. Jeremy M. This has to be some sort of messed up coincidence. Out of total paranoia, I start looking up random items. Paper towel holders, vacuums, baby gates. Great for your first apartment out of college. Jeremy M. If only it could vacuum by itself. Unfortunately, being a girl living alone, you have no choice but to do it yourself. Jeremy M. You'll never be able to use this, Jess. Why bother? Jeremy M. What the... Who is this? I go to the original review and click on Jeremy M's profile. They now have a profile picture and it's me, sleeping in bed, but the worst part is the bio. It's my address, and the date of time, 8:50 p.m. It's 8:49 p.m. It was a normal night like any other. I spent the day with my friend, getting our nails done before she left for England to visit her long-distance boyfriend. I saw some friends and hung out way too late, before one of them offered to drop me off at the train station so I wouldn't have to walk. This late at night, the station was a ghost town, with just a few people nursing bottles held in brown paper bags. I made my way into the desolate train station, looking for the correct platform, but there were so many. It looked like the station stretched off into the distance. There hadn't been that many platforms when I arrived earlier in the day. Had there? My anxiety really ramped up when the screens weren't working. They didn't show where the trains were going or coming from on any of the platforms. I brushed it off since I'm already an anxious person. I figured I was just confused, so I chose the platform I thought I came in on and asked a conductor of another train company if I was on the right platform. He said I was, but my train was unusually late. He told me to go to the other platform across the way if my train didn't show up in 10 minutes before its departure time. A few minutes after that train left, my train arrived. The doors opened, so I figured I could go and sit down early before anyone else showed up. It struck me as odd I didn't see anyone leave the train, but I just figured nobody was in this particular train car coming out this specific door. Too late for anyone working, too early for anyone to be coming home from the bars. I had made my way up the stairs to the second level, sat down next to one of the screens, hoping it would tell me where I am in my journey, but it was blue screened with the words, "He's dead, Jim," scrawled across the screen, along with some other font that was too small for me to read without my glasses. It was weird, but I thought I could just listen to the loudspeaker and actually pay attention to figure out where I was. My phone had no service underground in the subway, so it was just an expensive paperweight at that point. The train began moving, but the voice over the speaker was wrong. Demonic, one might say, full of random beeps and blips. I brushed the worry off and started looking out the window, watching for the station signs to start passing us by. None did. It was all just a blur of darkness outside the window. I heard the speaker come on again. Unintelligible noise assaulted my eardrums before the transmission ended in a hiss that sent chills down my spine. I could hear someone laughing in the distance, but it sounded wrong. Rather than being full of mirth, it sounded panicked, the way someone laughs when they're nervous. This was when I began to truly realize that something was off. I looked around, trying to catch a glimpse of the other passengers, mostly to see if any of them looked as freaked out as I felt. The train car was mostly empty at that moment, but I could see a woman with tears streaming down her face while she smiled. A man was staring very intently at the wall. Rivulets of something dark slowly dripped down the back of his neck, from under his baseball cap. It was in that moment I knew I messed up. A girl walked by me. Long black hair completely covered her face, and she wasn't wearing any shoes. She trailed thick black streaks with each step she took. More people had started filling in at that point, but we hadn't made any stops yet. I didn't know where they were coming from. A man walked in and sat down across from me. His eyes were practically glued to his phone, but when he didn't look up to see the passengers around us, he startled. A pitiful squeak escaped his lips, causing everyone else in the train car to turn towards him. He was staring at someone down the train who I couldn't see. As panicked sobs started to escape his lips, he managed to croak out, "Her eyes. What is wrong with her eyes?" I didn't know what to do. I simply made eye contact with him and tried to slyly shake my head, to tell him not to draw attention to us. The passengers didn't stop staring at him until a conductor with a strong stench of decay and burning plastic showed up and led him away. He didn't fight it, just let the conductor drag him away while seemingly frozen in fear. So now I'm sitting here, trying to control my face and not let on that I shouldn't be here. I can hear voices further down the train, almost like stage whispers that I can't quite make out. There have to be other normal people on this train. There's plenty that look normal, but they all seem unfazed by what's going on around us. I'm scared, and now that I'm on the train, I don't think it's taking me home.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Slumber Reads. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes on this one. Dropping a like helps out so much. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated, as I do post content just like this all of the time. A quick apology for this video going up a couple days late. Last weekend I went to a retro gaming convention. I recently picked up an original Xbox again, and it was one of my favorite consoles when I was a kid. I always really wanted the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game, but I just never got it. So I was at the retro gaming convention hunting for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I ended up finding it, which is so exciting. I got it home and played it, and the game rocks, by the way. But a couple days later, I woke up and I was just so unbelievably sick. I don't know if I got sick from the convention. One could assume I probably did, but my migraine was so bad I just could not record. So I took a couple days to rest. I feel a lot better now. I was so sick I wasn't even playing Buffy while I was sick. I was just laid up in bed. It was awful. But I'm feeling a lot better now. Got the video done. I hope you all enjoy it. If you would like to leave a comment letting me know what your favorite old video game is, I would love to read through those comments. I love conversations about old video games, so let me know. Let me know what your favorite old game is. But yeah, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the 2 hours of horror stories with no mid-roll ads, except for the ad break after this intro. There will not be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night.
My husband is the perfect man. Every woman I know has told me so. I just found out why. We met 3 years ago. He was everything. Attentive, funny, remembered the name of my childhood dog on the second date. My friends were almost annoyed at how good he was. Nobody's that perfect. My best friend Kara said. I laughed. I should have listened. The wedding was beautiful. The house came next. A Victorian fixer-upper in a small town 2 hours from the city. His idea. We need space, he said, away from all the noise. I agreed. I was in love. I would have agreed to anything. The first year was good. He cooked, he cleaned, he left notes on my pillow. He planned surprise trips. He never raised his voice. He never forgot an anniversary or a birthday or a random Tuesday he declared us day. My mother adored him. My coworkers envied him. Kara stopped warning me and started saying she wished she could find someone like him. I noticed the first thing about 6 months ago. It was small. So small I almost didn't register it. He was chopping vegetables and I saw him switch the knife from his right hand to his left. I said something like, "I didn't know you were ambidextrous." He smiled and said, "I'm full of surprises." I let it go. But I'd known him for 2.5 years at that point. I'd watched him write, eat, drive, throw a football, open jars, brush his teeth. He was right-handed. He had always been right-handed. Now he was left-handed. Like a switch had flipped. I started watching. His handwriting changed. Not dramatically. The slant was slightly different. The pressure was lighter. If you weren't looking for it, you'd never notice. I was looking. He started sleeping on the other side of the bed. He started taking his coffee black instead of with cream. He started humming songs I'd never heard him hum before. Old songs. Songs from before he was born. Small things. Tiny things. A dozen tiny things that each meant nothing on their own. I asked him about the coffee one morning. "Since when do you drink it black?" He looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not confusion. Something else. Something circulating. Like I'd asked a question he'd been expecting, and he was deciding which answer to use. "Trying something new," he said. "New year, new me." It was June. I started keeping notes in a private document on my phone. A list of changes. The handedness, the handwriting, the coffee, the sleeping position, the humming. I added to it every time I noticed something. By August, the list had 47 entries. 47. I know what the number means now, but I didn't then. The dog knew first. We have a golden retriever named Gus. I've had him since before I met my husband. Gus loved him from day one. Would sleep at his feet, would bring him toys, would whine when he left for work. Around the time I started my list, Gus had stopped doing any of that. He wouldn't enter the same room as my husband. He'd freeze in doorways. He'd growl in his throat, a sound I'd never heard him make. At night he'd press himself against my side of the bed and stare at the bedroom door. All night, every night. My husband said Gus was getting old. "Dogs get weird in their senior years," he said. Gus is 4. Last month I woke up at 3 a.m. and my husband wasn't in bed. I found him in the basement. He was standing in the dark, facing the wall, completely still. Not moving, not speaking, just standing there like someone had paused him. I said his name. He turned around and his face was wrong. For just a second, less than a second, his features were slightly off. The eyes a little too far apart, the mouth a little too wide, like someone wearing a mask that had slipped. Then it was gone and he was my husband again, smiling. "Couldn't sleep?" he said. "Came down here to think." He kissed my forehead and went back to bed. I stood in the basement for 10 minutes after he left, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, trying to unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't. That night, I added entry 48 to my list. Face slipped. The next morning, I called Kara. I hadn't talked to her in months. He'd slowly separated me from everyone. Not dramatically, not with rules or demands, just with suggestions. Kara's kind of negative, don't you think? Your mom stresses you out. Maybe we skip this visit. Your coworkers don't respect you. You should look for something remote. One thread at a time until I was alone in a Victorian house 2 hours from anyone I knew. Kara didn't answer. I tried my mom. No answer. I tried 3 other friends. Nothing. I checked my texts, my calls, my emails. I'd been reaching out. I had the sent messages to prove it, but nobody had responded in weeks. I checked my husband's phone while he was in the shower. I found a blocked numbers list. Kara, my mom, my dad, my brother, every friend I'd ever had, every coworker I'd ever mentioned. Blocked. Not on my phone, on his. He'd been intercepting. He'd been responding to them as me, telling them I needed space, telling them I was going through something, telling them not to contact me. There were hundreds of messages, months of them. He'd been both of us, the perfect husband and the wife who was pushing everyone away, building a cage out of my own voice. I didn't confront him. I pretended everything was normal. I smiled at dinner. I kissed him goodnight. I waited until he was asleep and then I went to the basement. I don't know what made me look behind the water heater. Some instinct, some part of my brain that had been putting pieces together while the rest of me was playing wife. There was a door. Not a real door. A hole in the wall covered by a piece of drywall that had been cut to fit. Behind it was a space. A small room, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet. Concrete floor, no windows. A single light bulb hanging from a wire. And on the floor was a phone. My phone. My old phone. The one I'd lost at the airport 6 months ago. He'd helped me look for it. He'd been so concerned. He'd bought me a replacement the next day. The phone was still on. It was plugged into a charger that ran through the wall. The screen showed a messaging app, open to a conversation with someone named Collector. The last message was from 3 hours ago. Specimen 47 is fully integrated. Subject has not detected the transition. Recommend proceeding to harvest phase. Estimated yield, 94% compatibility. Previous specimens, 46. Success rate, 100%. Above that were photos. Dozens of photos. All of women. All taken without their knowledge. Sleeping, showering, reading, crying. Living their lives while something documented them. One of the photos was of me, from last night, asleep in my bed, taken from the doorway of my bedroom. I scrolled up. The conversation went back years. There were 46 previous specimens. Each one had a name. Each one had photos. Each one had a final message. Harvest complete. Specimen number processed. Replacement deployed. I looked up the names. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. Every single one was a missing woman. Different states, different years, all unsolved. All last seen with a boyfriend or husband who was described by everyone as the perfect man. I heard footsteps above me. He was awake. I'm in the bathroom now. The door is locked. He's knocking, softly, patiently, the way he does everything. Babe, come out. Let's talk about this. His voice is exactly right. Exactly the voice I fell in love with. Warm, concerned, loving. But I can hear something underneath it now. Something I never noticed before. A second voice. Quieter behind the first one. Like two people speaking at the same time, but one of them is farther away. Babe, I'm not going to hurt you. You know me. You know I'd never hurt you. The door handle is turning. Slowly. The lock is holding, but I don't know for how long. I'm posting this because I need someone to know. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship with a man who's perfect, too perfect, if he remembers everything, if he never gets angry, if he's slowly separated you from everyone you used to know, if your dog won't look at him, if you've noticed small things that don't add up, check his phone, check the basement, check behind the water heater, and count the changes. If you've noticed exactly 47 of them, run. Muffled voices bleed up through the floor. I can't make out the words from here, but I don't think they're actually speaking. It's just sound. I can imagine my family sitting in a circle, blank-faced, the sounds of laughter and nonsensical speech flowing from their mouths, their jaws wrenched open wide. My family isn't real anymore. I don't know when it happened. Maybe today, maybe a year ago, but they aren't in there anymore. The bathroom is dark except for a candle on the counter. My skin barely registers the lukewarm bath water I'm soaking in. I still feel dirty, like my not family is sticking to me. I rise from the tub, careful to not make a sound, towel off, and press my ear against the floor. The things that replaced my family try to keep up appearances, but whenever I've been out of the room for long enough, their voices begin to slur and jumble together. That's what I hear now, incoherent noise. It still sends chills down my spine, listening to their idle voices chatter on like this. They overlap one another, laughter interjecting at random. As bad as it is hearing this, their behavior when I am around is 1,000 times worse. They're all smiles and pats on my back, making sure I'm okay or that I've eaten enough. They don't seem to want to let me out of their sight. A couple hours ago, when I came upstairs to take my bath, they stood outside the door with hushed voices for several minutes until they finally decided to go back downstairs. I decided I'm leaving. I don't drive yet, I'm just 15, but I have a friend about 2 miles away whose parents are on vacation. I don't have a long-term plan, but this'll be fine for now. In my bedroom I pack light, 2 changes of clothes, phone charger, the pocket knife my dad gave me when I turned 13, a water bottle. David will have everything else. My heart is in my throat. If I breathe too loudly, my not family will be at my door, forcing me to pick what we're eating tonight. I shoulder my backpack and slide open the window. The screen pops out easy enough. I toss my bag to the grass below and lower myself out the window before dropping to the ground. The side gate would be too loud to use, so I creep across the lawn toward the back fence. I can use the neighbor's gate on the other side. Peter? It's my mom's voice. I turn just enough to see she's running towards me from the back door, arms as wide as her smile. Just have dinner with me, please. One last time. I'm sprinting as fast as I can, backpack bouncing awkwardly as I go. I jump and pull at the top of the fence, but her grippy hands wrap around my waist and pull. Mexican beef tacos with chili powder and cumin and cilantro for topping. I land a kick in her chest and she falls away with a gasp of pain. Peter! She's crying. How could you do that to your mother, Peter? I almost feel bad. It's her real voice. This thing is using. I pull myself up the rest of the way and take a look back. She's flat on her back, dirt on her blouse, but she's smiling. That thing isn't my mother. Dad and Lily are smiling at me from the back porch, too. I swing over the fence, hurry across the neighbor's yard, and stride out into the street. After a few minutes, I slow to a walk. It doesn't seem like they followed. The whole way to David's, I'm glancing over my shoulder, but they aren't back there. The steady, mid-afternoon traffic eases my fear. Like there's still something sane in the world. There's a birthday party at the park, and then I'm ringing David's doorbell. Family trouble? I try to act nonchalant, chuckle. Parents are being annoying. He smiles, but it's just a normal smile. Thank God. You have no idea, he says. We're on the couch scrolling when he turns to me. Dude, you seen this? It's everywhere. It's one of those stupid viral rituals. I've seen them in my feed a lot recently. The girl on screen is in a dark bathroom lit only by a candle. She stares at her face in the mirror. She takes out a Sharpie and draws a weird symbol on the glass. I feel like I've seen it before. I invoke the dandelion. Let my hands and legs do your bidding. Let my breath and life be yours forever. She screws up her face, her lips twitching. Then the phone drops to the floor, still pointing at her. She looks scared, eyes darting in every direction. Yeah, so after this she clicked post. I ask. Obviously it's not real, but it has 1 million likes. You know the ad revenue on that? Don't. Just don't. He laughs. Bro, you're such a lightweight. I did it like a week ago. It's fake. I smirk, brushing it off. Yeah, I know. The rest of the day is quiet. After boxed mac and cheese, hot dogs, and a stupid comedy, David heads to bed. I'm on the couch, the moon crawling in through the windows, casting eerie shadows outlined in silver. I keep seeing my mom chasing me across the yard, but it's all messed up. There's blood smeared across her face. I'm not sleeping tonight, so I scroll. My For You page is full of this ritual crap. I try to scroll past it all, but it's video after video, symbol after symbol. One comment stands out. Don't do this. My family is hunting me down now. I close the app and get up to go to the bathroom. I splash my face with water. I almost don't recognize myself in the mirror. Then I see the symbol scrawled in Sharpie before me. I'd forgotten I'd done it. David whispers from his bedroom door down the hall. I startle and lock eyes with him. A slash of moonlight separates him from the shadows. You killed your family too, didn't you? No, I didn't. They were after me. I thought my parents were too. That's why you came here, right? It wasn't until mine were dead that I remembered doing the ritual. He nods towards the bathroom. When did you do it? I shove out into the hall and sprint out into the living room, not wanting him behind my back for a second. My knife is in my bag somewhere. I know it. I'm digging and digging. He's slowly walking toward me. Just admit it. Stay back. I can see the evil in his eyes. It felt good, didn't it? Carving into their annoying, pestering flesh. I didn't. My heart is bobbing up into my throat. He chuckles, then takes a deep breath. But you're free now. It's all over. I lay hands on my knife, flick it open and hold it out toward him. Then I feel the layers of sticky, dried blood on its handle. I see the sheen of crimson across the blade in the moonlight. Who did you enjoy killing the most? I see my dad and sister. Their throats slit, staring up at me from the back porch. Those jagged red lines are almost like smiles. I see Mom round the house, stumbling toward me across the yard, bleeding from her neck but still alive. Peter, just have dinner with me, please. One last time. She's crying when I kick her in the chest. I see the symbol still scrawled across my bathroom mirror before I bathe their sticky blood from my body. I didn't enjoy any of it. I'm crying now, but it's too late. Today was my last day of 8th grade. We do this thing called a clap out for the 8th graders to celebrate our last day. The 6th and 7th graders lined up in the halls and clap and throw confetti and spray silly string at us as we leave. It was pretty cool. Middle school wasn't easy, but on my very last time leaving, I felt like I was part of the group. In the parking lot, people high-fived me and asked me to sign their yearbooks. I had a really good day. The parking lot eventually emptied out. Other people had pool parties and barbecues to go to. When I finally got up to leave, I looked back one last time. Maybe high school would be better. I was halfway home when I realized I forgot my stupid retainer in my gym locker. I remember the time I accidentally threw it out. My mom made me dig through the trash to get it. I said it was gross. She said it was expensive. I headed back to school. There was only one car in the parking lot by the time I got back. It started to rain. So much for those pool parties and barbecues. The doors were still unlocked, but the halls were completely deserted. Mounds of confetti, silly string, and papers littered the floor. The lights were half off, flickering a little. An hour ago the place felt like a party. Now it made me feel weird. I thought there'd be a few teachers around, at least the janitor cleaning up. I got that feeling where the back of your neck tingles. I really wanted to go. I'm not sure why. As I turned the corner, I heard a faint noise. I realized it was singing. My walk turned into a jog. With each turn, the singing got louder and louder. I came to a stop right outside the locker room. It was coming from inside. The hair on my arm stood up. Then I felt kinda stupid. It's just music. I remembered how kids made fun of the janitor for listening to old people music on a little portable radio. I calmed down a little. He was probably sweeping in there. I looked at the massive mess all around me and felt bad. I pushed open the door. The room was empty, but the tinny music got louder with every step. I peeked around the corner. The wheelie garbage can and push broom were abandoned right in front of my locker. Where was the janitor? I don't know why, but I was hoping I could get in and out without seeing him. I crouched and grabbed the handle. My stomach dropped. The cold metal vibrated against my fingers. The music was coming from inside my locker. The skin on my neck prickled. I had to open it. In a messed up way, I had to know what was in there. Plus, if I went home without my retainer, my mom would kill me. I lifted the handle. The radio was in there. So was the janitor. His legs were crushed and folded up behind him the wrong way. The soles of his sneakers were up by his ears. One of his arms was twisted back at the elbow. His neck was bent at a right angle. His eyes were open. I thought he was dead. Then he took a deep breath and smiled at me. "Hey, kid," he said. I panicked and grabbed his hand. I thought someone had shoved him in there. I had to get him out. I put all my weight back on my heels and pulled, but he was stuck. He laughed at me. "You're going the wrong way." His rough hands dug into mine. "There's enough room for you." He hauled me forward. I stumbled and my face slammed into his crumpled torso. He was damp and smelled sour. His chest jiggled as he laughed again. "That's the spirit," he said. He wrapped his arm around my head and tugged me halfway into the locker. My head hit the cold metal in the back, and I heard a crack in my neck. I literally saw stars. I thought that was just in cartoons. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I thought about the one car in the parking lot. No one would hear me anyway. I'm a freshman now, I thought. I'm getting out of here. I drove my knees into the frame of the locker as hard as I could. I tasted blood in my mouth, but I didn't care. The janitor laughed and laughed, until I tore myself free and landed hard on the tile floor. He frowned. "Fine, go," he said. Then he pulled the locker closed. Inside, he sang along with the music. "When times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down." Outside, the rain had passed. The air was dense and muggy, but it felt fresh to me. The single car in the parking lot roared to life. My 6th grade English teacher waved as she passed and pulled away. Then it was just me. In the quiet, I swore I could still hear him singing. When I got home, I told my mom I stepped on my retainer. She yelled at me, but I didn't care. I'd rather be grounded than stuck in middle school. Forever. I'm writing this because all of the shrinks I've visited think I'm delusional. They believe something happened to me, but I dissociated the entire event and instead imagined this place. I didn't. Nothing I felt or experienced was imaginary. I don't know how I caught its eye, or if it will come back for me, and I live in fear of that simple thought every day. So here I am, writing this down to warn others, to tell them of the nightmare I experienced. Though honestly, I don't think this is really a warning, so much as it is a victim's statement. On my 21st birthday, I disappeared for 3.5 years. I only know this because I've been told nearly 1,000 times. I've been poked and prodded with so many needles that I've made voodoo dolls jealous. No one understood what happened to me. Hell, I don't understand what happened, but I know it was real. It was around 3 in the afternoon. I was excited to finally be able to drink at the bar with my friends. They had always teased me because I was the youngest, and the de facto designated driver because of it. But tonight it was my turn to get so drunk I wouldn't remember where I put my feet. It never came. I was going to stop by my best friend's place before we headed out. He lived just a few blocks away, so I figured I'd walk over. And when the time came, He'd be the designated driver for the evening. As I rounded the corner to his street, things changed. The world around me seemed like it was made of liquid. The air felt oppressively thick, and I had trouble finding my breath. I choked and gasped, clawing for air as everything around me seemed to shimmer and undulate. It was suddenly like I was swimming. Air seemed to vacate the space I was in quickly, and I felt the world darkening around me. Nausea gripped my gut to the point that I had fallen to my knees, gripping my stomach as the world spun. Then, everything blacked out. When I came to, I was somewhere else. It was a room. Everything looked like it was made from polished steel. There was no door, no windows, and nothing to indicate what time it was. There was just a single metal bench on the far end of the room, long enough to fit 3 people. As I explored and tried to get a sense of my surroundings, another overwhelming wave of nausea gripped me. The world spun as I clung desperately to consciousness, only to see one of the walls open and a pair of human-looking figures step into the room. I didn't see them fully, though. The world faded with my consciousness. The next time I woke, I was in a lying position. My head was throbbing, and there was some intense light burning into my eyes. I couldn't reach for my forehead, though. My hands had been secured to whatever I was on. I panicked. Desperately, began to thrash and pull at my restraints, but I couldn't move. I wanted to cry out, but something was covering my mouth. "Relax," a voice said from somewhere I couldn't see. "We understand there may be some confusion, but that is part of the experiment." I struggled against the bonds, cries for help muffled by whatever was over my face. "This will go far more smoothly if you just relax," the voice spoke again. "We cannot accurately determine the level of stress you are under, if you are already under so much of it." It was cold, clinical. Finally, something entered my vision. I wanted to scream when I saw it. I wanted to deny it was real, but I couldn't. It had no face to speak of, just a mass of flesh with what looked like a long, thin line traveling from top to bottom. The top of its head was crowned with strange, fleshy tendrils that opened to small rolls at the end of each. I counted 5 on the thing's head as it seemed to regard me. This will, unfortunately, be quite painful. However, it is of utmost importance to us that in the end you answer honestly. Hampering our experiments will only lengthen the process. For this reason, we recommend you comply. There was a click, and whatever covered my mouth was removed. "What are you? What is this place? I didn't sign up for whatever your experiments are." "Most test subjects don't volunteer to be tested upon." The thing spoke, but it had no face. There were no moving lips. I think it was at this point that I realized it wasn't talking to me. It was thinking at me. "Let me go, just let me go, and we can forget this happened," I begged. "That would yield unsatisfactory results," it replied. "Now, I would recommend preparing yourself, but we are unsure how prepared you will be able to make yourself." The soft electrical hum of machinery filled my ears as I felt my arm beginning to move on its own. The machine extended it outward at first, so that it was parallel with my shoulder. It conducted a few more experiments, testing this range of motion in my arm. Then the machine started to bend downward. Before I could call out, before I could tell this thing to stop, my arm snapped, broken in two like a branch, the bone spiking from my flesh. I screamed. Agony flooded my system. Adrenaline flooded my veins. My breath was suddenly ragged in my chest as I fought back tears, groaning in absolute anguish. "Please, explain what you are experiencing," the entity demanded. I could only scream. Pain flooded my system, and all I could think about was how much it hurt. "On a scale of 1 to 10, please rate your pain." It kept going, completely ignoring my screams. Eventually, shock started to settle in. The pain was still there, but I could think. "It's an 11. Is that what you wanted me to say? Will you let me go now? You broke my arm. You have your data." The creature tilted its head as it looked at me. We have only just begun our experimentation. You are already unable to continue. Yes, yes, for the love of God, I cannot keep going, I begged. Please, 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 just let me go. There was another click, and soon my other arm snapped, sending agonizing jolts of electric pain through my body again. Again I screamed. Again I was racked with agony. Please, please, for the love of God, let me go. The entity regarded me the same way. Cold, methodical, like a scientist taking notes on a lab rat. Because that's all I was. I was a lab rat, a toy, and this thing was gauging what it felt like when it broke me. My leg was next, and again the pain was excruciating. I passed out at this point. The world went white around me as my body tried to cope with the sheer amount of trauma it was being put through. Evidently, though, these things had something for that too. I snapped back awake as it broke my other leg, the creature watching with some sort of bizarre fascination. At least, I think it was. There was no real way for me to determine what this thing was doing. At this point, your body has suffered severe trauma. The levels of pain you are experiencing will have flooded your body with extreme levels of adrenaline. If it weren't for the fact that this thing was talking in my head, I wouldn't have heard it through the haze of suffering it cast over my thoughts. Another click. Another whir. I felt my head being pulled upward. The pain in my neck was growing more intense as the machine continued to pull. Then suddenly there was nothing. No pain, no voices, no anything. The world around me faded and there was black. That was the first time I died. I woke on the ground an indeterminate amount of time later. No broken bones, no bruises, no cuts, nothing. It was as if the brutal agony I had just gone through never existed. The problem with that mindset, with those thoughts, was that it did happen. I remembered every second of it vividly. Getting over the shock of things, I decided to get my bearings. I was in another room. From what I could tell, there was a bench, much like the one I had seen when I first arrived in this place, and everything was that same polished metal. There were no signs of anything else. Just the bench, what looked like a sink, and that was essentially it. So I moved to the bench, sat down and waited. All I had were my thoughts, and those weren't doing me much good at the moment. Outwardly I seemed calm enough, but inside I was panicking. None of this made any sense. Where was I? How did I get here? Didn't I just literally have my head ripped off my shoulders? I didn't have much time to think. I was hit by another wave of that crippling nausea. I tried to fight it, to maintain my consciousness, but eventually I was still overtaken. When I woke, I was on some sort of fleshy mass, and as my vision focused, my stomach rolled. The entire room looked like it was made of living flesh. The walls undulated and pulsed with an unseen energy. The ground was soft and a little difficult to move across. There was a smell in the air. Clean and chemical, but underneath it, there was another odor, one I couldn't quite place. I wasn't restrained this time, but I almost wish I was. The place I was in was unlike anything I had ever seen before, and that only made me want to run. Do not be so frightened, I heard a clinical voice call out. Your last test went smoothly enough, so we are going to continue experimentation. Please. Be prepared to give us a thorough explanation of what you are feeling. I'm feeling terrified is what I'm feeling. You guys killed me. You ripped my head off. You broke my arms and legs. Now you've got me here. Let me go. When the experiments are finished, you will be free to leave. The voice patiently responded. Remember, compliance drives progress. The more information you give us, the less you will have to endure. They killed me again that night. I was mauled by some sort of ravenous dog-like creature. All the while they continued to ask me to rate my pain, to explain exactly what I was feeling. All in all, they killed me 1,278 times. Every morning I'd wake up alive, no damage, but the scars on my mind remained. I was shot, stabbed, poisoned, starved, infected, drowned, burned, and brutalized. Each time it only took a day for me to die. Anything that slowly killed me would be accelerated as they tried to gather more data. Sometimes my death was quick, and those were the ones I learned to appreciate. Other times, though, it dragged on for what felt like an eternity of pure and utter pain. I learned a lot about life, religion, the soul, and all of that superstitious BS. You want to know what happens when you die? Where you go? The answer is terrible. It's not just a ceasing of existence like the atheists believe, but there's also no paradise or pit. It's nothing. I don't mean that in a nihilistic sense. I mean it literally. It's blackness. There's no smells, no sound, nothing to feel or taste. It's just a vast emptiness. The horrifying part, though? You're aware, you're present, just a consciousness in utter nothingness, floating through the void. The worst death? The worst thing I ever experienced in my time being killed daily? Drowning. The whole time your body is screaming at you, telling you you're dying, begging you to find air so it can reset itself and keep you moving, but it can't. So you start to get this, pins and needles feeling all over your body. Your ears start to ring and then everything starts to go dark. Then you're in the void, dead. Sometimes it felt like they let me stay dead for longer, but in the end I'd always wake up in the same place. Cool, metal room with nothing but a bench and a sink in it. Nothing changed about their demeanor. They simply continued to ask questions, and if my death was quick, they'd inquire about what I felt when they brought me back, ask me questions about my mindset, to rate my pain. The same things over and over. I eventually became numb to dying. I'd wake up, knowing that the day held another way for me to be annihilated. The creatures would gas me, take me into one of their experimentation rooms and kill me. For 3.5 years they killed me. Then, one day I was brought into one of the test chambers. The entity was already in there. I wasn't restrained or gassed, just brought before it. I wanted to lunge at it, to make it experience a modicum of the death I had tasted at its hands, but something was preventing it, like my mind wasn't going to let me move against it. After this, testing will have concluded. We've gathered all of the information we need from you. It thawed at me. My heart skipped a beat, and for the first time since my arrival, I felt the bitter taste of hope in my mouth again. You mean you're going to let me go? You will be released when testing is concluded. We had promised this when testing began. I couldn't believe it. All right then, let's get this over with. The entity said nothing else. It turned to me. It wore no clothes. Its body was this mixed hue of light purples and pinks, almost like bruised flesh. Its skin wrinkled in strange places and its arms were too long. They nearly touched the ground. Its knees bent in the opposite direction, but that didn't seem to slow it as it bent and moved forward at an alarming speed. I felt it place a hand on my shoulder, felt the familiar agony of a vice-like grip lifting me into the air to meet its face. I had seen what was hidden behind that slit in the head once. I never wanted to again. One of the tendrils on its head moved into my view, and I watched as a long, bone-colored needle slid from the hole in it. I slit my throat with that needle, and I bled out on the ground in front of it. My last thought hearing, "Thank you for your cooperation." I woke on the ground the same place I had disappeared, the corner of the street near my buddy's house. I didn't know how long I'd been gone at this point, or how many times I had died, only that it was over. The relief I felt was overwhelming. I couldn't believe I was free. I laid there in the road staring at the sky and not a chrome ceiling. For the first time since I had been taken, I began to weep. I was so overwhelmed with everything that had happened that I just broke down and sobbed in the middle of the road. I don't know how long I cried for, but God, it was cathartic. I did eventually head over to my friend's house, and I scared the crap out of him. That was when I had found out I was gone for 3 years, that no one knew what happened to me. I tried to explain what had happened, but as I did, I realized how crazy it sounded. Yeah, man, I was coming to your place so we could go get smashed, and I was abducted by some alien thing that killed me every day for the and a half years I was gone. Doesn't exactly come off as something a sane person would tell anyone. The police were contacted. My parents were contacted. The news showed up. I was a local celebrity for a while. No one believed me about the alien, though. If that's even what it was. Maybe it was a demon. Maybe it was something else entirely. All I know is that it was able to kill me and bring me back completely unharmed. Eventually, it was suggested I talk to a psychiatrist. Everyone believes something happened to me, that I was kidnapped and taken somewhere, maybe feed copious amounts of psychoactive drugs, so that I'd think it was all aliens and dying. But when I explained what happened to the shrink, when I went into graphic detail about dying in so many different ways, I could see the concern on the doc's face. They tried all sorts of therapies, tried to get me to open up about what happened, but every time the story was the same. I was abducted, and some weird alien thing killed me, over and over again. They couldn't get the breakthrough they were hoping for. So I was tested, medically. Doctors wanted to know if I had been dosed with psychotropic medicines, or some such BS. No one could accept my story. I still don't think anyone believes me, and I don't blame them. I mean, if I had been told by someone they had been killed over 1,000 times in over 1,000 different ways, I don't think I'd believe them either. I don't know what it was that they were trying to determine, or why it involved killing one person, but I know that it was a nightmare. I'm terrified of heat mirages at this point. I don't know if these things are done with me, or if they're just luring me into a false sense of security. It doesn't matter, though. If they came again, I couldn't stop them. And if they come for you, you won't be able to stop them either. Those who celebrate Father's Day usually have a fun story or two to share about a bonding moment. I've been meaning to write here for some time, but needed to get into the new rhythm with my family. A lot has happened these past few weeks, but I'll never be able to see my father in the same light again. My family and I have been pretty insular from the outside world as far back as one could expect. My great-grandfather moved our family to the outskirts of nowhere, Wisconsin, to live out the family business of trapping and hunting. We've stayed in the same remote area ever since. It wasn't much, but it gave us enough food and income to sustain ourselves. Folks around here don't trust much of the world outside the Great Woods, and have come to trust our neighbors instead. You'd think in such a remote part of the world, you'd be pretty close with your family. Well, you'd be wrong. All my life, my father went out into the woods surrounding our pasture hunting for game. It didn't matter what he'd be after. Deer, elk, pheasant, even black bear. Any excess meat or hide we'd sell to local markets, or trade with neighbors. Despite this, hunting kept my father away for most of my life. He missed every important period of my life. My mother gave birth alone in the hospital while he hunted in the woods with my older brother, Rhett. He wasn't there for my first steps, never helped me with schoolwork, Little League baseball games, a no-show. He didn't even bother coming to my graduation earlier this year. The only semblance of father-son dynamic was he'd come home each night and give me a hug. No words, just a 10-second embrace and, occasionally, a kiss on the forehead. He'd always smell weird, like old grass, dirt, and body odor. I could see the lifeless, ragged look in his eyes from a long day. His absence would be worth it if he actually knew how to hunt. Despite how long the family has been in the hunting game, I've never seen him bring home a single prize. No deer, no elk, not even small game like rabbits or squirrels. Was he just messing around in there? I knew he was in those woods because I would hear his rifle constantly. Even in the dead of night, I'd hear the piercing roars of his Winchester 94 off in the distance once every few hours. I used to think he must have seen something in those if he fired off a few times every 7 or 8 hours or so. Dad and my older brother Rhett never took me on their hunting trips. They always told me I wasn't ready, despite practicing with a rifle since I was strong enough to hold one as a 6-year-old. I was good too. The purposeful distance never helped them. Thankfully, Rhett was a much better hunter than Dad. Most days, Dad and Rhett would venture into the woods together like clockwork, but it would never be Dad to make the kill. Rhett always brought in the big game and supported us financially. In the evenings, I'd help Rhett out with skinning, processing, and packaging the meat. Rhett and his wife, Jess, recently moved back into our home. Rhett was 30 and was preparing to be a dad of his own. Jess was in her 3rd trimester, and while Rhett was working his butt off to be a provider, our dad was always out in those woods, wasting the days away from his family. Rhett and Dad often took shifts so that one might have an opportunity to rest. It was difficult to not be resentful, even with his occasional evening hugs. Those don't make up for lost time. I recall one night when I was 16, talking to Rhett about Dad's disappearance. We didn't talk too much about our feelings, but what's an older sibling meant for if nothing else? "Rhett," I mumbled, "why does Dad not want to be around me?" I recall Rhett pausing his hands, looking down pensively at the young elk hide he'd been cleaning since noon. "He does want to be around. Dad does love us. He really does. He just..." Rhett exhaled sharply. "It's not my place to say. Not yet. Just know he is doing everything he can for us. For you. He and I both do. You'll understand when you're older." Rhett hugged me close once he saw how watery my eyes were from frustration. I didn't know at the time, but Rhett was right. Even if he seemed non-existent, he was out there doing the best he could. I know they say it's the thought that counts, but it would have been nice to be near him growing up. Everything changed about a month ago when I turned 18. I had just graduated high school and was still considering what to do with my life. I initially wanted to join the family business and hunt alongside my brother, but if I couldn't join in, maybe go off to community college, make a name for myself, make Dad proud that I became something other than some Voyager wannabe in the Midwest. Last month, in the early morning while Rhett was out in the woods hunting, Dad came into my room. "Time to get up, Will. Get dressed. There's something I need to show you." I got up groggily, waking up with another head full of messy brown hair. "What do you want? I'm not in the mood today." My dad sat at the foot of my bed. "I know it's been hard. It's difficult for me to explain, but there's a reason I'm always off in those woods. I think you're old enough now to understand better. Just know that whatever you're about to see, I've done it for you. Rhett's been pushing me to take you out into those woods earlier, but he knows my reasons for waiting. Happy birthday, son. It's time I took you hunting and taught you our family business." Great. Finally 18. And my first gift from my father was work. Something felt off, though. Dad always seemed weary, but never this invested into my own personal life. I grabbed my jacket, brown cargo pants, boots, and got out the door. For the first time ever, I went hunting with my dad. Our trek into the big woods took over an hour. Pine trees loomed over us, blocking out the sun as we ventured further and further out into the woods. It was pretty barren, and we never ran into or saw any animals worth shooting. Eventually, we reached a tall deer stand used for hunting with elevated range. The tower stood several meters over the ground, standing solidly in place by the massive iron poles and wire anchoring the structure to the earth below. The windows were covered by camouflage blinds, blending the box-like structure into the spring foliage around it. The only way into it was a shabby wooden ladder. It was a bad time to admit to my dad that I was afraid of heights, but I wasn't about to blow my one chance. Entering the hunting stand, I was sat amazed. Hundreds of pictures lined the walls inside the room. Some recent, some old. Family pictures. Looking closer, I realized they were pictures of important moments of my life. Pictures of me as an infant, me wearing an oversized Little League uniform before my first game, pictures of me in bed sleeping as a toddler, my first bath, church events, all with me front and center. Mom and Rhett were in them too, but it was clear that I was the focus of this collage. Dad? What is all this?" He looked at me, smiling softly. Will, I know I haven't been around too much. Not spending time with you, not seeing you crawl as a baby, not being there for your first steps. Seeing you grow, it was heartbreaking. All I want to do is protect you, but... He paused, voice cracking. There can only be 2 hunters at a time for this thing, and I didn't want to subject you to what I've had to do these past 18 years. I'm getting older and I want to spend time with you. The real you, and I can't keep doing this forever. It's time you take over. Dad, what are you... I was interrupted by a hollow cracking noise coming from the woods. It sounded far, like a dead tree falling down. Only there was no loud crash, just more cracking. Hold that thought, son. Let's get this done quickly. I've fixed the rifle at its head. I need you to see what I've been hunting all these years. I shimmied over towards the rifle. It was postured with a metal rest, fixed towards a dark region out into the woods. Looking through the scope, my heart dropped. Far off into the woods was a gangly figure, splayed out across the forest floor. A body without a head. Its old-timey clothes made it stand out like a sore thumb in these woods. Whoever this was, they wore corduroy pants, an ivory-collared shirt buttoned all the way up, and a dark gray, withered suit jacket one might see in a production of Oliver Twist. I jolted backwards, twisting my head so fast it almost gave me whiplash. Jesus, Dad, what is that? It's not what it looks like, son. Look closer, son. What do you see? In horror of the fact my dad could be a murderer, I turned back around through the scope. He was right. Looking closer at his arms, it seemed human-shaped, but I've never seen forearms extend that far past a man's knees. Its middle finger was noticeably longer than the others. All 7 of them. Its knees were off too, not inverted like a dog or a bird. Its knees were splayed perpendicular to its torso. Strangely enough, its corduroy pants seemed to be tailored specifically for whoever or whatever this was. The cracking noises persisted. It took me a minute, but it was apparent that the shifting sounds were emanating from the mysterious corpse. What exactly am I looking at? Son, the rifle should be aimed directly at its head. No matter what you see, I need you to pull the trigger. Waiting too long will only put us in danger. What? Dad, please, what's going on? I don't... The body shook viciously, its headless frame spasming on the forest floor, crunching with each jerky motion. Now, Will, the second you see its eyes, pull the trigger. I grabbed the rifle, trusting the man I once barely knew in a situation I barely understood. Peering through the scope, I saw what he meant. The top of its skull was slowly reforming. It would be inaccurate to say it was regenerating, like a lizard growing its tail. Instead, the bloodied mud and earth beneath its wound seemed to slither towards the headless corpse's neck, forming first into an oblong shape, and morphing slowly into what resembled a skull, a human skull. Do you see its eyes, Will? I could feel my heart pounding, watching whatever this thing was slowly creep its way back to life. Its massive middle finger began twitching, whipping backwards towards its forearm like a scorpion's tail. Its chest began lifting up, breathing, its ribs almost piercing the white shirt it wore. At long last, the head had returned. Its long neck seemed to struggle, lifting its head up slowly. I've seen freaky monsters in comic books and movies, so I was expecting the worst, bracing for whatever this beast was. Its face shot right up while reclining. Dark blue eyes met mine. It spotted me instantly, as though it knew exactly where I was. There was something familiar about its gaze, though. Looking closer, I realized it had my face, down to every minute detail. What the... Now, Will, yelled my dad, sitting right beside me with his binoculars. Take the shot now. The not-me's face bellowed out a hollow noise, like a broken siren, its voice piercing my brain, though it spoke no words. Its arms slowly dragged up, bracing itself to stand up. I pulled the trigger. The bellowing stopped, I closed my eyes while pulling that trigger, but there was no mistake. Its head was blown clean off. There was a minute of silence between my dad and I. Dad broke the silence first. "Good shot, son." We spent several hours up in that box. He explained everything that night. Whatever that thing was, it had been following our family for generations. Dad thinks it's an alien. Our great-grandfather called it a doppelganger. Whatever it was, it used the visage of the youngest man in our family. It left unattended. It would sink closer to whoever's face it wore. It never reached any of our family members because each and every day, 2 members of our family would go out and hunt it down. Its body barely took any damage, aside from the head. It took time to regenerate, but would always regenerate. This is what my father had been hunting all these years. Hunting the not me for the entire course of my life. "It was difficult, you know," my dad began. "When you were born was one of the happiest days of my life." I chuckled. "More than when Rhett was born?" He laughed. "Don't get too cocky. Before Rhett, that thing wore my face. Imagine trying to kill yourself over and over again. Thankfully, my father, your granddaddy, took most of that burden. When Rhett came into our lives, that beast changed. I don't know where its clothes come from, but its face always shifts into the youngest. It expects you to protect it, or at least neglect from attacking it. I don't know what it wants with us. All I know is that now it's after you." I turned back towards the body of the beast. Its body lay motionless, but I could see its splattered blood from across the trees slowly slither back toward the ground, in the direction of its husk. "When you were born," Dad continued, "it took your face, your infant face. I came out here each night, taking that thing down over and over again. Seeing your chubby infant face through that scope was like hell. Pulling the trigger was worse. I cried every day, knowing that it was like killing my son over and over again. That's why I have your pictures around constantly, to know what I'm really protecting, and to remind myself of the fantastic life you have. I may not be around much, but I'm proud of the man you've become. The beast out there is hollow, lifeless. It just imitates you, but it could never be you. I couldn't live with myself if that thing ever took you out of our lives. Or worse, tried to take the life you have for itself. I regret the time I spent not being near you, but it was worth it to preserve the man you've become, and the son I love so, so much. I hope you can forgive me." Of course I forgave him. I mean, the poor guy has been killing forest demons for decades now. Who wouldn't feel bad for the guy? We both spent several minutes tearing up, sharing our feelings while splitting a pack of Coors Banquet. He shared his excitement to start golfing as a pastime. He also shared his concerns for the future. Back when I was young, the beast would grow its head back once every 2 days or so. Nowadays, it's at least 3 times a day. It grows faster based on how old the person it personifies is. I was hesitant to start hunting this thing down each day, but I was happy that we got to hang out more. While he'd be around, he shared with Rhett and me that it was time for him to retire. There can only be 2 hunters at a time, boys. He constantly harped at us. Apparently I had an uncle at some point who tagged along with Dad and our grandfather as a third wheel. It didn't end well for him. When I'm not busy hunting, I get to hang out with my dad. Now that he's around the house more, we've gotten to catch up on a lot of lost time. Turns out he's a massive Red Wings fan, just like me. We even got tickets to a few of their games for next year. It was confirmed that while Dad enjoys his retirement, Rhett would take over as the main hunter for the beast in the woods. While I took over Rhett's job as the primary provider for the family's hunting business. Rhett went into those woods 3 times a day, just like Dad. It's been somewhat of a seamless process, albeit unnerving, knowing my brother was blowing my brains out across the forest floor each day. Things will be different now, though. Just this morning, Rhett's wife went into labor. They had a happy, healthy baby boy with dark blue eyes, a short nose, and dark brown eyebrows. a face that Rhett would soon grow uncomfortably familiar with.
The lake on my brother's property has no bottom. Me and my brother live on 25 acres out in the middle of nowhere. He inherited it when our dad passed. Our mom and stepdad had already died a few years back, so it's just the two of us. When I say out in the middle of nowhere, I really mean out in the middle of nowhere. A 30-mile drive to the nearest grocery store, 40 to the nearest big city. But we like it. It's nice and quiet. My brother Carl is an artist. Not an artsy artist. He does design work for big companies out on the east and west coast. Does all his work on a computer. He can work from pretty much anywhere that's connected to the internet. Now, it costs quite a bit to get internet in the middle of nowhere, but it's possible, and he can more than afford it. Me? I'm Jake. I'm a shiftless, no-good, lazy layabout. At least that's what my stepdad always said. My bio dad, when he wasn't being an abusive drunk, would say pretty much the same thing. That's fine. I've made my peace with it. I keep busy by taking care of the place, doing the lawn care, the maintenance, painting, all the crap work that needs to be done. We have a pretty simple life. The strangest thing about this place is the lake. Well, it's actually just a glorified pond. It's about 80 feet across, and almost a perfect circle. Sinkhole, I'd guess. It's way out on the edge of the property past the gazebo. Officially, it's known on the maps as Lake 224, but everyone calls it Gasper's Lake, after some fella that lived here like 100 years ago. The water is unbelievably clear, way more clear than I would have ever expected, and deep. The thing is, I have no idea how deep it is. I heard rumors in town that it's bottomless when we first moved out here, but I paid it no mind. But you can't see the bottom at all. One summer, I had a fella from the state fish and game department come out and stock the lake with fish. I thought I'd do some fishing that fall, but it just didn't take. Don't know how or why, but come fall there wasn't a fish to be found. Didn't make any sense. If they'd died, I'd have seen them floating, right? Another thing is the light. Sometimes at night I could swear I see a glow come up out of the water. I got a nice little setup. I'd sit at the gazebo until late in the evening, grilling bratwurst and sipping cold beer from the cooler. But on the way back, that glow. A color that's just not right, you know? Not bright or anything. You can just barely notice it. But it's there. Anyway, my brother doesn't care about any of that stuff. He's got no sense of adventure, no curiosity. He's all about deadlines, meetings, and products. Sometimes he'll fly out from the local airport on a puddle jumper to go see a client, and leave me out here for a week or two. You'd never get me on one of those tiny single-engine planes. I kind of get the feeling he's embarrassed of me, but whatever. He flew out to North Carolina, or maybe it was Virginia, one week, and I had the place to myself, so I called up Earl. He's my drinking buddy. I called up Earl and said to him we're gonna find out how deep Gasper's Lake really is. He brought over his John boat, and I'd say about 300 feet of half-inch nylon rope. We were going to be real scientific about this. I tied a cylinder block to one end, and we marked off the rope in 10-foot sections. He backed his truck up to the water, and we got the boat in, and headed out to the center of the lake, and dropped the cinder block over. I figured it'd bottom out at 50 feet or so, but no. That rope just kept flying right on out. 50 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet, just kept going. Maybe we should tie it off, I asked. Yeah, that's probably a good idea, he replied. We got the free end of the rope tied off around the cleats and watched the rope keep spilling out. Every bit of the rope played out, and the boat resonated with a loud thunk. I pulled the rope a bit up out of the water, and could feel the weight of the cinder block on it. Earl? I paused. Earl, there's not any way this lake is 300 feet deep, I said. No way. He nodded. What the actual hell? We gotta get more rope, I said. My uncle's got a full industrial spool of half-inch nylon rope. 1,000 feet. There's no lake anywhere around here that's 1,000 feet deep, Earl replied. I grabbed the rope and started to pull it up. It was going to take a minute or two to pull it back up on the boat. Earl started winding it up as it came in. I got about 50 feet of it on board when it just stopped. Like just dead stop. I leaned back and pulled harder. Nothing. It felt like the cinder block had gotten caught under a ledge. I wrapped the rope around my forearm and gave it one good heave. Hung up on something? Earl asked. I guess so, I started to say when the rope tugged back. Hard. Threw both me and Earl off balance enough the boat flipped over. The water went over my head and I sputtered. Righted myself and broke the surface. Earl came up right beside me and got out a loud, "God dang it." We struggled to get the boat set right, but we got it. That's when I noticed the cleat had snapped right off. Rope and all had gone down into the lake. So, 3 days later, me and Earl were back again. We spent all afternoon setting it up. Got an electric motor to pull the rope back up and a pulley system at the end of a boom winch. It almost looked professional, bolted there in the back of his truck. Almost. Earl grinned and smacked our jerry-rigged setup on the side. I always knew those machine shop classes I took would come in handy. He backed up the truck and swung the winch over the water. It extended out about 10 feet. I tied off another cinder block, no shortage of those around here, and tossed it in. We watched the rope run and run, the spool spinning freely. We had it set up so it would spin in one direction but not the other, so we could winch it back up. The rope spooled out faster and faster. 200 feet, 300. It's still going, Earl said, incredulity in his voice. 400. No way, I said. Earl stopped grinning around 600. By 800, neither of us were talking anymore. The spool kept spinning all the way to the end. 4 minutes after I tossed the brick in, it ran out with another loud thunk. Hard enough the truck rocked backwards a bit. Jesus, Jake. What in the actual hell is going on here? That's 1,000 feet of rope. I have no earthly clue, buddy. There's no way it's 1,000 feet deep. I ain't got no more rope. Like, I guess I could order some, Earl said, but was interrupted by a loud groaning coming from the winch. Something was pulling on the rope. I could hear the strain of the fibers. The truck was practically vibrating. Then the front end of the truck started to rise up a hair. Jake, it's gonna take my truck, Earl yelled as he ran over and hopped in. He started the engine and began to pull away when all of a sudden all the tension let out of the line. I went over to the winch and turned it on and the rope began to wind onto the spool. It took a lot longer to pull it all up than I thought it would. But then I saw and smelled the cinder block. It was covered with a dark, glistening slime, something the color of rotting leaves mixed with oil, and it stank like, God, I don't know, a squished bug mixed with kerosene. I cut the line and let the brick drop back into the water. No way in hell I was touching whatever that was. Earl pulled his truck up away from the edge, got out and came over to where I was staring at the water. A camera, he said. What? Like an underwater one? I asked. Yeah, I know a guy. He's got an underwater rig. A little robot submarine. He uses it to inspect bridge pilings, dams, and culverts for the state. It's rated down to 1,500 feet, but it usually doesn't get used that deep. Got lights and a camera. You can drive it around, he said. Sounds like a plan, I said. But Earl, I paused. Isn't this more than a little bit weird? Like even for around here. Maybe we should call somebody. I don't know. Like an official? Jake, this is the most interesting thing that I've been mixed up in since Farmer Brindle's two-headed goat got loose in the dollar store. Look around. Nothing happens around here. I nodded. This place wasn't known for its excitement. I'm gonna call him. Get it out here. he said. I've got an old VCR we can hook it up to. Record what we find, I replied. Earl nodded. Good idea. The next couple of days passed without incident. I spent the time power washing the garage. I know, high excitement, but it's got to get done. Earl pulled up in his truck the next afternoon. It really was a pretty cool setup. The sub was about 4 feet long and had lights and a camera on the front that could be panned around remotely. We tied it off to the winch with the nylon rope. It had its own coil of cable for the camera that we sat on the tailgate. I made sure it had a full charge, Earl said, manhandling it out of the truck. It'll give us at least a couple of hours. Getting in the water took longer than it should have. The thing was heavier than it looked, and we kept second-guessing which end was supposed to go in first. I think the camera end goes in last, I said. That doesn't make any sense. How's it gonna see anything pointed in the mud? I didn't say pointed at the mud. I said last. As in, we lower in the tail first. Earl looked at me. That's the same thing. We went back and forth on it for a while before we figured out it didn't matter. The thing would right itself once it hit the water. We felt pretty stupid about that. Alright, easy now, Earl said. As we walked it to the edge, it was awkward. No good place to grip it. For God's sake, Jake, don't drop it. That thing probably costs more than my truck. We got it in without dropping it. Barely. Earl picked up the controller, and we watched it bob there for a second, listening a little to one side, and then it straightened out and sat there humming quietly. Okay, Earl said. Down we go. 300 feet down, it was dark enough that we snapped on the lights fully bright. All it showed was the rough stone on the side of the sinkhole. The water was still crystal clear. Around 400 feet, the walls changed. I almost missed it. Earl, hold up. Can you back up a little? He reversed the sub and we both leaned in toward the monitor. The rough pitted limestone we'd been watching for the last 10 minutes had stopped. What replaced it was dark and smooth, almost glassy. I looked at Earl, he looked at me. We both looked at the monitor. That ain't natural, I said. No, he said, just that. We stayed there a minute, both of us staring at the screen. The sub's lights caught the dark surface and threw back a dull reflection. Whatever it was, it went down as far as we could see. Earl's hand was still on the controller. You want me to keep going? He asked. I should have said no. Yeah, I said. Keep going. At 800 feet, the walls just disappeared. The sub drifted out into the open water, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The sinkhole had been feeding into something else the whole time. A cavern. The sub's lights didn't reach the far walls, didn't reach the bottom. Just open black water in every direction. And the hole we'd come through sitting in the ceiling like a drain in reverse. Earl? I said. Yeah, he said. Neither of us said anything for a minute. The sub just hung there in the dark, lights cutting maybe 30 feet in any direction and then nothing. God, Earl said quietly. I wish I'd brought some beer. I laughed, couldn't help it, then stopped. Keep going down? I asked. He already was. Can you point the lights down? I asked. Earl adjusted the controller and the sub nosed down slowly. The light swept across what I thought was the bottom of the cavern, and I squinted at the monitor. Something was down there. A tangle of shapes, thick and dark and piled on each other like cable left in a heap. What the hell am I looking at? Earl said, mostly to himself. The sub drifted lower. The shapes resolved a little. Thick as tree trunks, some of them thicker, coiled loosely over and around each other, tapering at the ends, widening in the middle. Some of them were moving, drifting, kind of like seaweed. Earl? I see it. One of the big ones began to uncoil. It peeled away from the mass, and as it moved, it revealed a surface beneath it, dark and rounded and covered in a texture I couldn't make sense of at first. It was dark and bumpy like an old avocado. I was still trying to figure out what I was looking at when it split open down the middle. It was an eye. Had to be 20 feet across. The iris was the color of old bronze, and the pupil was shaped like a triangle, and it was looking up at the sub. My stomach dropped straight out of me. Then the rest of them started moving. All of it. The whole mass coming apart into individual shapes. Eyes on every surface. Opening. Mouths, too. Rows of teeth catching the light, opening and closing on nothing. The cables, the arms, whatever they were, filled the cavern below us. The monitor went dark. "Earl, we have to get out of here," I screamed, but Earl seemed frozen. I grabbed Earl's arm. He was still staring at the monitor. "Earl, we have to go right now." The surface of the pond began to swell and boil, whirlpools and waves churning around. He blinked, came back. We ran for the truck. We dove in and Earl started it up, but we didn't make it 20 feet before the back end lifted. It had come up fast. Nothing that big should move that fast. The tires left the ground and Earl screamed something I couldn't make out over the sound of the frame starting to give. I had opened the door and jumped out without even thinking about it. The ground came up quick and I landed with a wet crack as my ankle snapped. From the ground I could see the truck maybe 30 feet up, wrapped in something that looked like a giant black and glistening worm, being pulled toward the water. Earl was still in there. I know because I could hear him screaming. Then the roof caved in to the sound of shattering glass and metal forced beyond its limit. And then I couldn't hear him anymore, as the truck sank beneath the water. The VCR had landed a few feet away. I don't even remember Earl throwing it. I told the paramedics I fell off a ladder. Anyway, now I don't know what to do. My brother's due back in 2 days and the sheriff keeps coming around asking about Earl. The state inspection fellow wants his submarine back, and I don't know what to tell him. All I got is this busted leg and a video we took, and I'm not sure who I need to show it to. I think I'm going to call the governor, maybe the press. Should I call the FBI? What should I do? I don't know how to start this. I've been staring at my screen for 20 minutes trying to figure out where exactly things went wrong. Maybe it started the night of the accident. Maybe it started before that. I honestly don't know anymore. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that 3 months ago, I had a perfect life. Sarah and I had been married for 6 years. 6 quiet, boring, beautiful years. We lived in a small house in Denton Street. She worked at a school. I worked from home doing accounting stuff. We had a cat named Biscuit. We watched movies on Friday nights. We argued about who left the kitchen light on. Normal. Everything was so normal. Then came October 14th. I was driving home from my cousin's place around 11 p.m. Rain was coming down heavy that night. I remember the wipers going like crazy and the road looking like a black mirror. I don't remember the exact moment it happened. 1 second I was driving, next second a flash of white light, a sound like the world cracking open, and then nothing. I woke up in the hospital. Sarah was sitting right beside me, holding my hand so tight her knuckles were white. She had clearly been crying for hours. Her mascara was all the way down her cheeks. "You're okay," she kept saying. "You're okay. You're okay." I had a cracked rib, a gash on my forehead, and a concussion. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. A truck had drifted into my lane. The car was totaled. I spent 2 days in the hospital. Sarah stayed both nights, sleeping in that horrible chair beside my bed. She was the most caring person I had ever known, and I loved her more in those 2 days than I ever had before. Things felt normal when I got home. For about a week, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Sarah always smelled like this vanilla body lotion. She'd been using it since before we even got married. It was one of those small things I loved about her. Whenever she walked into a room, there was this soft, warm smell. About a week after I came home from the hospital, she walked past me in the hallway and I smelled something else. Something cold. like wet earth, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. I didn't say anything. I thought maybe it was something she'd picked up outside, maybe from the garden. I let it go. But it kept happening. The second thing was the way she slept. I've slept next to Sarah for 6 years. I know how she sleeps. She always curls up on her left side facing away from me, with one hand tucked under the pillow. Always, without fail. About 10 days after the accident, I woke up at 2 a.m. for no reason. Sarah was lying flat on her back, completely straight, arms at her sides, eyes closed. She wasn't snoring, she wasn't shifting, she wasn't doing anything. She looked like she was laid out in a coffin. I told myself, people sleep in weird positions sometimes. I rolled over and closed my eyes, but the next night, I woke up at 2 a.m. again. Same position, flat, still, arms down. I put my hand near her mouth to feel if she was breathing. She was, but just barely. Tiny little shallow breaths. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I want to say something here because I know how this sounds. I was not going crazy. I had no history of mental illness. Yes, I had a concussion, but the doctors had cleared me completely. I was not imagining things. I know what I saw. The third thing was the photographs. Sarah loved photos. Our house is full of them. Framed pictures on every wall. Our wedding, our holidays, random Tuesday afternoons she found beautiful enough to capture. She's always been like that. One evening I was dusting the shelves in the living room and I stopped in front of our wedding photo. It's a big one, right above the fireplace. The two of us outside the church, me in my gray suit, her in her white dress, laughing at something one of the guests had said. I looked at it for a long time, then I felt my stomach drop. In the photo, my arm is around Sarah's shoulder. Her hand is up near her face, laughing. Everything normal. Except, Sarah's shadow on the ground behind her was pointing in the wrong direction. My shadow stretched behind me away from the sun. Normal. Her shadow pointed toward the sun, toward the light. Shadows don't do that. Shadows can't do that. I took the photo off the wall. I stared at it for a long time under the kitchen light. I told myself it was a camera trick. A lighting thing. Something with the way the photo was printed. I put it back on the wall and I never looked at it again directly. But sometimes from across the room, I could feel it. Like it was wrong in a way I couldn't explain with words. I started watching her. Not in a crazy way, just paying attention. She never ate much. I noticed that. She used to love food. She could finish a whole pizza by herself on bad days. Now she moved food around her plate. She drank water, but I never once saw her actually swallow a bite. She stopped going to bed before me. She used to fall asleep on the couch by 10 p.m. Now she sat in the chair in the corner of the bedroom just waiting until I got into bed. Then she would lie down. Her phone? Sarah used to be on her phone constantly, texting her sister, scrolling through cooking videos. One day I picked up her phone while she was in the shower. No messages, no call history, no app usage. Like the phone had never been touched. I called her sister, Mira, from my work phone. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "How are you? Have you talked to Sarah lately?" There was a pause on the other end. "What do you mean?" Mira said slowly. "I just mean recently, like this week." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you okay?" Mira asked. Her voice sounded strange, tight. "I'm fine, why?" "Sarah hasn't..." She stopped. "Can you come over? Can you come here right now?" I told Sarah I was going to the pharmacy. She smiled at me from the couch, that warm smile I had fallen in love with. "Don't be long," she said. Mira opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were red. She looked like she hadn't slept. She sat me down at her kitchen table, and she put her hands flat on the table and she looked at me. "She's been calling me," she said. "Every day. Twice a day sometimes." I stared at her. "Okay." "She's been calling me from a number I don't recognize. Not her number. Mira's voice was barely above a whisper now. She keeps saying the same thing every time. I didn't want to ask. I asked anyway. What does she say? Mira's eyes filled with tears. She says he survived the accident, but I didn't. Please tell him I love him. Please tell him to look at who came home. I drove home in a state I cannot describe. I walked through the front door. The woman on the couch looked up and smiled at me. "You're back," she said. I looked at her face, the same eyes, the same smile I had kissed 1,000 times. "Who are you?" I whispered. She tilted her head slightly like she was confused by the question. Then she smiled again, wider this time. "I'm your wife," she said softly. And somewhere in the house I heard Biscuit, our cat, let out a long and terrible scream from under the bed. He had been hiding there for weeks. He never hid from Sarah, not once in 6 years. I'm writing this from Mira's house. I haven't gone back. The thing in my house still calls me, from Sarah's number, every night at 2 a.m. I never answer. But last night it left a voicemail. I played it this morning with shaking hands. It was Sarah's voice. My real Sarah's voice, crying. She said only 4 words. "Don't let it stay." I don't know what came home with me from that accident, but it's still in my house, sleeping in my bed, feeding my cat who screams every time it comes near, and I don't know how to make it leave. If anyone has experienced anything like this, please, I need help. I will try to update when I can. Please stay safe. Hug the people you love, and if something feels wrong, even something small, even something you can't explain, trust that feeling. Trust it. Hey, Chris here. Thought the almighty internet might have some solution to my bizarre problem. Well, it's more of a situation than a problem, but I'm running out of time and I'm running out of options. I think my grandmother is about to get killed. I mean, should I say get killed? Or die? I don't know anymore. I should explain. It's a weird predicament I'm in, but I love my grandma and I want to save her. Help her somehow. The problem is that where I live, this town, whenever someone is born, someone has to die. And it's not just being born. If you ever come inside the perimeters of our town, you will inevitably kill someone in here. I know it's crazy, but I swear it's how it works. Trust me, I have enough evidence of that. It's called my life. And trust me, there's a reason our town is in the middle of nowhere. There's a reason we have the insane number of rules we have, and well, there's a reason I'm explaining all of this to the internet, even though it's strictly forbidden by law here. You might be wondering why I'd be worried about my grandma specifically. Well, the thing is, I'm going to have a baby sister. And if you're following so far, I think you know what that means. Or maybe you don't. I should probably explain myself because it sounds simple, but it's not. So let me explain how things work in this hellhole I call home. So, like I said before, outsiders are forbidden to come in. We have no tourists. So don't even think of trying to find me, please. We don't want outsiders. I don't want to be responsible for... I don't want to cause more trouble. We don't even let the people who carry our food and supplies to come in. It's all done with some weird long mechanical tunnels. So there's some basic rules around here. Having animals is not forbidden, but it's highly discouraged, and every animal has to be neutered. Anything from a parakeet to something bigger. Humans excluded, of course. I live with my mom, my dad, and there's me and my grandma. We used to have a bird. Relevant part. Used to. But well, it was my fault. I'm such an idiot. Let me illustrate how messed up this situation is. When I was young, I found a dog, a stray, outside the town's border. I was I was just a kid. I didn't consider it. I didn't consider the rules. I had some cheese on me and threw it at him. He, of course, started following me around. And I went home all happy and glad I had a new friend. When I got home, my bird was on the ground. I don't think I need to explain what happened, besides how dumb and naive I was as a kid. My parents, though, oh boy, I was never grounded so hard in my life. They were absolutely fuming. You know the rules here are more like guidelines, and each family has to fend for themselves. I didn't just kill my bird that day. I almost killed someone in my family. Like, each family is on their own. When someone is born, usually the person who dies belongs to the family. When I was born, my other grandma from my dad's side died. When someone new comes to town, as rare as that is, it's more random. When I brought the dog, he kind of became part of the family. Animals are different. Sometimes they take another animal's place. Sometimes someone else's. That's why they're highly discouraged. Don't ask me how it works with bugs or worms or something. I have no idea. We still have that dog. I guess we have to. So yeah, this isn't just some quirky little fun scenario for me. It's quite literally life and death. That's why I'm scared. I know what's going to happen. Oh, and by the way, I'm not scared for myself. I know my grandma is next. The older you are in the family, the more likely you are to be picked. It's almost guaranteed. Otherwise, it would be total chaos. So yeah, that's why I can't leave town. That's basically saying goodbye to my parents forever. Everyone in town has to stay, or we essentially get replaced. Which also means I can't really leave to take my grandma's place. Then I'd be gone forever. And maybe my grandma still dies. My sister is born and then some stranger takes my place. I love my family. I don't want to go. And I don't want to deprive them of their son. I don't want my sister to just replace me. But I want to save my grandma somehow. Or at least find some loophole or something. That's why I'm asking for help. Maybe you don't believe me. Let me give you more proof. I told you already, when I was born, my other grandma died. Everyone got upset in my family, but it's what's expected, I guess. Not my grandpa, though. He hated my guts after that. He was really rough with me. I remember him taunting and teasing me, saying one day he would have another kid and then I'd die. Or one time he took me to the border of town and kept pushing me near the lines so that I was almost out. He kept yelling at me. What are you scared of, huh? Scared you're gonna fall? God, I hated that man. The way he died was a joyous one for me. I know what you might be wondering. How did he die? He died of old age. We're not immortal here. That would be silly. The man was 95 years old and a chain smoker. That's not the bizarre part, however. There was a gruesome death in our town some years ago. A man had a girder hit him in the head and killed him straight off. I was one of the people who witnessed it. It messed me up. A lot. I remember being a kid and falling after seeing that. And I remember there was a little girl next to me. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She just came strolling by on a bicycle, not giving a crap that a man had just died. She just passed everyone and passed near me. I'll never forget what she said to me. What are you scared of? Scared another one is going to fall on you? I'll never forget her squeaky voice as she rode off in her stupid red bike. I hated that kid. Oh, the man hit by the girder. That's a whole other story. Apparently, everyone in town knew. The man who died, well, he cheated on his wife. And I'm pretty sure the day the kid was born, well, that's the day. The day I saw the girder hit his head and take his lower jaw clean off. He died on the spot, but everyone around, everyone near him, they didn't care. No one cared. It was like karma. Like everyone saying, you deserve it. People in this town are brutal. You obviously can't just have kids. Not out of wedlock and not out of city planning. Our version of Planned Parenthood is quite literally planned. You can't just have kids willy-nilly. There's rules. There's another story I recall of a man who did some, well, things I can't describe on the internet if I don't want to get banned, to his daughter. As soon as the town found out, they hanged him. Yes, we hanged him. Well, not me, I was just a kid, but this place, there's something different about it. It's old. It's sacred. Harming someone else like that, it's like doing that crime times 100. That's what my mom used to say when I was a kid. If you harm someone in town, you're harming everyone. I'm not sure what that means, but at this point, I don't want to think about it too much. I want to retain some of my sanity. And that's not what's weird about this story. When I was older, some of the even older kids told me what else the adults did. Like when the man who was hanged died, they say a stray dog walked into town. Fairly standard stuff, I guess. Thing is, the townspeople took that dog and killed it too. I hate violence towards animals, but they said they had this rage about them, like they knew something. Maybe there was something wrong about that dog, but it didn't end there. Once the dog died, a cat came to town. They killed it too. Then a possum, then a rat, a smaller mouse, a bird, and, well, that's it. That's as much as the older kids told me. They said one other thing that disturbed me a bit. They said afterwards they gathered together and ate every single animal they killed. Cooked, of course. Not that I'd have much interest in eating a cooked rat, I guess. I'm not really sure what happened after that day. Some people tell me the town used to have 1,000 people before that. I heard other rumors that there's something locked up in the basement of the mayor's office, serving some punishment. I'm not sure. Even after I became an adult, they wouldn't say. It's a sort of town secret. It doesn't really matter. You get my drift. Now you understand what's the deal with this place. I'll leave you with one more story if you don't believe me. There was a car crash some years ago. Pretty nasty stuff. 10 people died. Big tragedy for us. I'm not sure I believe what they say, but I was told that day a woman who was going to have a kid actually had quintuplets. The insane part is that she died. Right afterward, 4 people wandered into town. Said they'd been lost in the woods for weeks. We took them in and they became residents. One of them is a nice lady who makes the best pecan pies. You might be thinking, aha, it's not 999 people anymore. Well, the thing is, I sort of lied. The initial report said 10 people died, but that's not true. 2 of them survived. If you can call it surviving. Those people, those 2, what happened to them? Their faces, their bodies? It's no way to live. They just... It's like they're being forced to stay alive. I don't want to talk about them, to be honest. So now you understand what's at stake. If someone dies, someone has to take their place. And when someone is born, well, someone is going to die. Someone in the family. Wait, hold up. My mom is yelling for me. Update. I have to go to this hospital. I'll talk to you later. Edit. Hey guys. I guess I was too late. My mom's water broke and the doctor said the baby is coming sooner than we expected. I seriously messed up. I thought I had another month. It's been a few days and I've talked to my grandma a lot in the meantime. I'm at the hospital writing this, waiting for my baby sister. At least my mom thinks it's a girl. I didn't mention this, but my mom is more traditional. She didn't get a lot of ultrasounds. She just let the baby develop naturally. I guess she's confident the baby is fine. Makes sense in this town. I exhausted all other options. I'm scared about what's going to happen. My grandmother is at peace with what's to come, but it's just so unfair. I really wish I could help her. Thanks for trying, guys, even though there was no time for suggestions. Wait, here comes the doctor now. He looks somewhat shocked. Why was he looking at me like that? I went to talk to the doctor. I can't believe this. I don't understand what's going on. My mom just had triplets. I'm posting this from my car. I've already filed a missing persons report with the police for my parents, and they've cleared it as a crime scene, but there's no way I'm ever going back inside. This all started back in February. Maybe that's why, because of how dreary and sunless that month is. My dad is a good man. I need you to understand that before any of the rest of it. After his mom passed 2 years ago, he got quiet in a way that scared me more than crying could have. And when he found these forums last winter, these wellness communities, I was relieved. He was back to exercising, dieting, sleeping better. He was excited about something again. He'd come down to breakfast and tell me about circadian hygiene and ancestral light environments, and how our eyes evolved for firelight and starlight, not the blue glow from screens and 6500 Kelvin bulbs we drown in now. Honestly, some of it made sense. That's the part nobody warns you about, that it starts off less than harmless. The first simple healthy habit was showering in the dark. He read that artificial light at night wrecks your melatonin, and the bathroom was the worst offender, so we started showering with night lights for minimum light. I went along with it. I didn't have to read shampoo bottles anyway. My sleep even improved. Then it was no screens after sunset. The emitted light causes dark circles. This was a huge issue. My mom and I felt we shouldn't have to change our routines and give up creature comforts for his lifestyle choices. What sucked was he was understanding, and compromised to sequestering himself in rooms with no screens after sunset. It upset us, and eventually we cut back on our screen time just so he could spend more time with us. We ended up bonding more. Who could have guessed phones and streaming services separated families? Even after he changed all the bulbs in the house to the lowest Kelvin, he still refused to turn on a light unless it was absolutely necessary. It deeply irritated me and my mom, because he'd still use his laptop, on the lowest brightness setting with blue light blockers however, to spend his days on the wellness forums, researching. He started talking at dinners about how even fire and candlelight was a compromise our ancestors wouldn't recognize. How the truly restored nervous system needs real dark, total dark, the dark of a cave, a womb, a place where your sunset melt into the environment and your edges blur. Your bodily systems balance out and synchronize. And you go back. We didn't have a response. That's where I should have said something, though. Anything. 2 weeks ago, he taped contractor bags over my bedroom window while I was at school. When I got home, he was proud. He showed me the seams, how he'd gotten it so that there wasn't a single pinhole. Cassie, I'm getting a 2 on the Lux meter. 2? The guys on the forums are gonna love this. Staring at his phone, posting it. 3 days ago I came downstairs and tried to flip the kitchen switch. No 2000K melatonin improving infrared bulb. Gone. Every light bulb in the house was gone. He'd gone around with a stepladder and a trash bag and collected all of them. Even the one in the oven. Even the little one in the fridge that you'd have to break the door mechanism to reach. The bag was filled with shattered bulbs in the bin outside. I came back inside and found him reading the forums. Before he could open his mouth, I screamed at him. Thank God Mom had already gone to work. I screamed and cried and begged him to just please be normal. Please stop looking at his laptop while I talk to him. He just looked sad. Like I had hurt his feelings over something he was proud of. He looked normal. He said he would fix things, and put everything back to how it was originally. He promised and hugged me. I went to school worried for him and Mom all day. A part of me truly believed I'd come home and the house would be bright, with clear windows and televisions blaring. During the day I tried to call my mom, hoping to prep her on the latest piece of insanity, but kept getting sent to voicemail. My vision stung driving into the sun on the way home. My eyes, all too well chronically adjusted to the dark. I kept thinking about being so exposed in the light, and how my dad was right, that being in the dark made you lose your sense of bodily self. I wish I could have crawled under my blankets in bed, and let the feeling of sensory deprivation dissolve the knot in my stomach. When I got home, Mom's car was already in the driveway. The house looked like a bad dream, a perfectly normal exterior with flat black windows. I went inside, and even leaving the front door open did nothing to pierce the all-encompassing darkness. I went to the front window to tear the contractor bags with my nails, and winced as I scraped something hard and gritty. I shined my phone light and saw he had painted some kind of truck bed liner over the windows in thick layers. I turned to the interior. Dad? Mom? The phone flashlight was all I had. Living in darkness made it feel less like a beacon, and more like a trespasser. I checked all upstairs, calling for them. As I made my way back down near the kitchen, I froze. The basement door was open. I hadn't checked the basement yet. Dad? Mom? Please. Please say something. Nothing. The stairs go down into the unfinished part. Bare studs, concrete floor, the furnace ticking. I was imagining that. No need for a furnace when it has that pesky pilot light. He had disconnected it and snuffed it out before. The basement was huge. At the far end, there's a little room Dad always meant to finish. Just concrete with a shallow alcove in the back where all the previous owners had a safe flush to the wall. Pitch black. My flashlight couldn't find the back of it from where I stood. Something about the room was oppressive. I didn't cross past the threshold. I just did my best to shine the light in. That's the part I keep snagging on. The light went in and didn't come out, like the alcove was deeper than the house. And from inside it, my father's voice. Calm, close. Cassie. I couldn't see him. I want to be precise because the police asked me 4 times and I gave the same answer every time. I was pointing my light directly into that room and there was no one in it. Cassie, Mom's in here with me. Come here. I started crying. I asked him to come out. I begged him. I told him I'd take him anywhere. I'd stop fighting him about the lights. I'd beg every window myself. Just come out, Dad, please. If you come in here, he said, everything will go back to how it was before it all began. I asked him what he meant. I asked him how. I stood there in the dark, asking the alcove how, and there was no answer. There was never an answer again. I walked in. I did. I pointed the flashlight into every corner of that concrete room, and it was empty. No alcove deep as a well. Just a shallow dent in the wall not even a foot deep. No father, no mother. Concrete and dust and the smell of cold concrete in my own breathing. I searched the whole house. Both floors, closets, the attic crawl space, under beds, the backyard. I checked the alcove again and stared at the wall. I screamed myself hoarse. I called the police. They were kind. They were thorough. 6 officers swept that house with real flashlights. Not a phone, and a canine. And they found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No sign of him or Mom. They asked about the windows and I watched them decide quietly. What kind of man spray paints truck bed liner on his windows? And what kind of daughter waits this long to call? The part I can't explain, why it's being posted here and not a news source, is the center of this. I explained why I took so long to call, that my dad started off getting better rather than worse. I went to show them the forums on his laptop, his reasoning for altering the house, and they were gone. I checked his search history, even searching the forum names and keywords. You couldn't burn those images of deep wine red text on black boxes out of my brain. I know what I saw. They shrugged and said they would look into it, and took his laptop. I finished filing the report this evening. 2 missing persons, house clear and safe to enter again. No signs of intruders. So that's everything. That's the whole thing, start to finish in order. The way I needed it down before the doubt finishes settling in. If you are just finishing this, scroll up to where it all began, where my dad was still just a grieving family man getting too into a wellness trend, where the worst thing in the house was no Netflix after sunset. I want you to read it knowing how it ends. I started sleeping with the dome light of my car on. Never any dark. I think about what he said the dark would help undo. How it would feel like a return to a womb. Something where you would blur and meld with the universe in desensitized harmony. Before even the Big Bang brought light. Going back to how it was before it all began. And some nights I lie in that careful light. And I find myself wondering what would happen if I'd walked into the dark a little faster. I think about it more than I should. I got the security cameras for my 40th birthday. My wife said it was a stupid gift. She said we lived in a safe neighborhood. She said I was being paranoid. She was right, but I installed them anyway. The cameras cover the front door, the driveway, and the backyard. I check the footage every morning while I drink my coffee. It's become a routine, a habit. I don't even think about it anymore. I notice the figure on day 12. The backyard camera catches the whole yard. Fence on both sides. A small shed in the corner. Woods behind the fence. The footage from 3:11 a.m. showed something standing near the shed. I paused it, zoomed in. It was tall, thin, dark, just standing there. Not moving. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't move in the footage. It didn't move on the live feed when I pulled that up either. I checked the footage from the night before. Same spot, same time, same figure. I checked the night before that. Same thing. I checked the entire week. Every night at 3:11 a.m., the figure appeared. It would stand near the shed until 4:03 a.m. Then it would disappear between frames. 1 second there, the next second gone. I didn't tell my wife. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a reflection, a tree branch. I told myself a lot of things. I started staying up. I'd sit in the dark living room with my laptop open, watching the live feed. Every night at 3:11 a.m. the figure would appear, just standing there, not moving, not looking at the house, just present. I started noticing things about it. It was always facing the same direction. Not toward the house, toward the fence, toward the woods behind the yard. I wondered what it was looking at. I checked the footage from the other cameras, the front door, the driveway. The figure never appeared on those. Just the backyard, just near the shed, just facing the woods. I asked my neighbor about it. He's lived next door for 20 years. He said he'd never seen anything unusual. He said the woods had always been quiet. He said it with a look on his face that made me think he was lying. I asked my wife if she'd ever noticed anything in the backyard at night. She said I was spending too much time on those cameras. She said I needed to relax. She said it with a tone that made me stop asking. I didn't stop watching. I started marking the dates. Every night it appeared. Every night it faced the woods. Then I started noticing the changes. Small at first. Almost unnoticeable. On night 23, it was a foot closer to the fence. On night 27, its head was slightly tilted, like it was listening. On night 31, its arms were stretched towards the woods, both of them, fingers extended, almost reaching. On night 39, it was standing at the fence line, right up against it, still facing the woods. I took a walk out there one afternoon. The woods were quiet, too quiet. No birds, no animals, just the sound of my own footsteps. I walked for about 20 minutes before I turned back. I didn't go into the woods again. The figure kept appearing, every night, different positions, different postures, but always facing the same direction, always facing the tree. Then last night, I checked the footage. 3:11 a.m. The backyard was empty. I scrolled back. The figure had appeared at 3:11 a.m. as usual, but at 3:41 a.m., it had turned. For the first time in all the footage I'd watched, it had turned. It looked toward the house, then it disappeared between frames. He never came back. I stayed up until morning. I watched the live feed. Nothing. I spent 3 hours staring at the footage from the night before. Then I noticed something I should have seen weeks ago. The figure never once looked at the house. Not even when the porch light came on. Not even when I walked into the yard one night, stupidly brave, and stood 20 feet from it. Not even when I shouted at it. Whatever it was watching wasn't here. I don't know why it left. I don't know what made it turn. I told myself it was a good thing. It was gone. The thing that had been standing in my backyard every night was finally gone. I should be relieved. I'm not relieved. I woke up this morning and checked the footage from last night. Something was standing near the shed, facing the house, standing exactly where the other one used to stand. The first creature is gone. Something else took its place, and now it's looking directly at the room I'm sitting in. I rewound the video to see when it appeared. It was there at 3:11 a.m., but it started moving at 3:47 a.m., one step toward the house. Then another at 3:48, another at 3:49. I kept watching. The camera never showed it reach the house. It just disappeared between frames. I checked the front door camera. Nothing. The driveway cam. Nothing. Then I checked the backyard feed again. The shed was empty. The yard was empty. But something was standing directly in front of the camera, close enough that all I could see was a dark shape, looking into the lens, looking past it, looking at me. And for the first time since I bought these cameras, the image wasn't recorded footage. It was live.